for April 29th, 2019. Kathleen, can you take a roll and tell us who showed up tonight?
Commissioner Hill?
Here.
Commissioner Marks?
Here.
Commissioner Mazza?
Here.
Vice Chair Jennings?
Here.
Chair Euring?
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, very good. Carrie Upton, could you possibly lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Absolutely. Please stand, face the flag, put your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Carrie, thank you very, very much. Can we get an approval of the agenda, please?
I move the agenda be approved as staff recommends.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Before I'm posting the agenda, Kathleen.
The agenda for this meeting was properly posted on April 22nd, 2019.
Okay, we have no ceremonial presentations, communications from the public. Do we have any of those? No communication from the public. Very good. Have a quick meeting. Planning Commission comments. Anybody?
I have one.
Craig, please, this Commissioner Hill, please go ahead.
Yeah, in normal meetings, we are receiving a Woolsey update from typically Richard Malika fills us in. He's not here tonight because it's a special meeting. But I asked him if he could, from now on in his updates, I asked sort of an open-ended question. Could he include some anecdotal information about interesting, constructive, no pun, building practices and materials and methods that they're coming across in the city when somebody comes in, in terms of green building materials or fire-safe materials, without giving away any proprietary or private information. They're in a unique position to see what kind of good ideas are coming in and to serve as a conduit to sort of crowdsource that and put it back out if other people might benefit from those ideas too. I left it very open-ended, and I suggest to the public now that if you or your neighbor or somebody's doing something really neat and interesting in terms of rebuilding and doing it differently or better this time, that you share that with the city and with Richard Malika so that we can all hear a little bit about that anecdotally to spice up the Excel graph we see every 2 weeks, or every week, actually.
What you're trying to do is come up with suggestions people are using to, what, for green building or for
green building, fire safe.
Okay.
How many people are using steel studs now instead of wooden sticks? What's the state of the art there? And
what do you think, Bonnie?
I'm sure Richard would be happy to include some information about that. I'll just warn you though that at the planning stage, we are mostly seeing, site plans and building envelopes and things like that. And we may not know all the details.
Probably better to come from building and safety.
Building safety, we could mention to Craig George about including something like that in the city council update, just because of the limited information we may have at the planning stage.
There was at some point in time a conversation that the city council had that says they're going to try and identify improved building methods that we could employ. They haven't done that yet, as far as I know. Not that I know of. Okay.
We are working towards working on an item regarding landscaping and more fire resilient and resistant landscaping.
Commissioner, I think your idea is a good idea. As a matter of just a real question, how do we get it enacted so that there's some reference material that people can use? I think, down the line, that's what we want to do. We want to try and improve the safety of the houses we're building and see how that works.
And the city can serve as a conduit to share some of the best information that it's seeing.
Maybe the place to go is to the architects and the guys who are building these houses, right? Planning these houses. They're the ones who should. Okay. Any other commission comments?
Got one.
John.
Are we still on the agenda? Are we still on schedule to hear Imaginization in March? I mean, April, May.
Sometime in the future.
At the budget meeting, the special budget meeting on Wednesday, the council did reaffirm that they want that to be a priority right behind the Woolsey fire rebuilds. We are not going to get it to the Planning Commission in May just because we're still catching up on things, but we should have it in June.
Okay.
You promise? It's supposed to be in March.
No, it was never promised in March. That it was meant to be as quick as possible. But Councilmember Mullen specifically didn't put a time limit on it.
Commissioner Marks, anything?
Not today.
Okay, just two quick ones, Bonnie. I got a letter today and a email from Patricia Salazar talking about the LCP amendment dealing with affordable housing. Are you gonna comment on that? Okay, cool. Last one was, I skimmed the information from the budget meeting and short-term rentals, okay? There was an item in there that said, we've hired a financial guy who's gonna go out and do some financial stuff, okay? And we're not gonna hear short-term, he's not gonna get that done until 2020.
What?
I don't think the timeline is that long for that.
What are we trying to do, do you know?
This is what I know. The council at the last hearing where they considered short-term rentals, one of the areas of interest was what would be the effect of a ban financially, and so that's what the purpose of this analysis is to.
But I thought the council came back and said, we want an ordinance that sort of limits this thing to some extent, right? I mean, so, and I understand look, money is important, but if I'm gonna trade off money to the well-being of the Malibu residents, I'm not sure that's a trade that everybody wants to make.
Right. Well, so the council asked for that additional information in addition to some other things when to have that all come back together. That's my understanding of what's going on. That we're getting that, getting an expert to do that financial analysis at the same time as we're doing the other, getting together the other information and revisions that they asked for.
You school people better pay attention to this, because if we don't get something done with short-term rentals, you're gonna have a city of renters and no enrollment in your schools. Keep that for what it's worth. Okay,
Now, well, I got a question, comment on that. Why would it take better part of a year to find out what kind of rentals there are?
I don't know that it would. I don't think that's the intention.
we'll find out. Just, everybody's pay attention to that one, because that could have a lot of impacts to a lot of places. All right, let's go. Any other comments? Bonnie, you have anything you want to talk about?
I was just going to mention that the Coastal Commission will be hearing two city items at the meeting on next Thursday, May 9th. One is, at long last, they have scheduled our affordable housing amendments that will update the LCP to match what the municipal code already says about our affordable housing element. And then the second item is the LCP public access map update. The city council heard that I think late last year, and so that item has been scheduled for certification also. We expect there will be some minor suggested modifications that come from the Coastal Commission that will come back directly to the council, but that's what's going on. May 9th, that meeting is in Oxnard at the Oxnard City Council chambers, if anybody has some free time next Thursday.
And just, the agenda for the Coastal Commission is online right now. So if you've got an interest in this, go online to the Coastal Commission, you can find the agenda, and they're accepting comments up prior to the meeting. So
Yes.
whatever works. John, go back again.
Is this the housing element that's already expired? I know we had one that we're working on a new one, but this is the one that we were late on, and then we filed, and then it already expired like 2 years ago?
This was submitted to the Coastal
Nothing's-
Commission in 2013.
Yeah, nothing's
Which
expired.
shows you the speed of your federal government, or local government. Go ahead.
State government.
State government. They're all the same.
There was some back and forth between us and the Coastal Commission staff on that one. We had our first housing element certified, and I'm not going to get the years exactly right. Seems like it was 2014 or something like that, certified by Housing and Community Development, and then the next element was also certified by HCD, but that involved updating the municipal code and the LCP to include, among other things, the affordable housing overlay. You'll remember that whole process with the EIR and everything. So this is the process of certifying the LCP amendment that goes along with that. Meanwhile, we have started on the next RHNA cycle, Regional Housing Needs Assessment cycle, that the Southern California Association of Governments, SCAG, does periodically. So that's kind of going in tandem concurrently with wrapping up the last one. But nothing's out of compliance or expired or anything like that.
Okay, and as far as affordable housing go, we heard auxiliary dwelling units like a year ago. And as I
Last
understand it,
September.
they've never been to city council. Is there?
That's because the planning commission asked for some revisions and additional information, and we were in the process of preparing that when the fire happened.
So it has to come back to us and then go to?
Yes, it comes back to the planning
So as
commission.
it stands now, you can't build one?
No,
No.
Okay.
the state law, the code already allowed for what is now known as accessory dwelling units. We know them in our code as second units or guest houses. So this ordinance will bring our codes in alignment with state law
Excellent.
and our LCP.
Okay, very good. Anybody else? Done? Okay, let's go to the consent calendar.
I'd like to
Anybody wanna
pull
pull?
3B1.
Okay, 3B1. Could we get a staff report, please?
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. The item you have before you is for a proposed formula retail clearance for Bash Store. It is a retail clothing store located in the Malibu Country Mart, occupying Unit D5. And it'll be occupying 1,365 square feet of retail space. I think that's it. The center is allowed 23,256 square feet of formula retail area. And the total occupied square feet would be 18,962, including the proposed tenant. I'm free for any questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Maz, I assume you pulled this for a reason?
Yeah, I pulled it because I, like an idiot, spent 3 hours watching the prior hearings on that ordinance. And it was very clear in those hearings that adjacent walkways and parking lots did not cross streets. And that just because COS owns the Starbucks building does not make it part of that shopping center. And when we calculated this, obviously there's so very little in COS's center that there's no problem with this determination. But future determinations, ownership of the center does not have anything to do. When you own 3 centers, they have to be contiguous and they have to have common parking areas. And in this case, we counted the 3rd center, the one with the Starbucks building in it, which is across the street and not adjacent. So I just want to make the point, and you can, if you want to go watch the hearings again, go ahead. But that was very clear. And so ownership is not the determining factor.
So Commissioner Maz, you're saying that for this item, you don't have a problem with this. This is more of a looking forward item.
Well, I would say that, no, this one qualified, but property number 3 should not have been counted.
Okay, so that's something we should keep in mind as we go forward.
Well, I hope so.
All right, fair enough. All right, moving along. Let's go
Well,
to,
we have to consent.
consent, I'm sorry. We
I
have to vote?
consent.
It's a receive and file,
It's a
right?
receive and file?
So without objection, received and filed.
Without objection? Done, okay? Item 5A, okay, this is the item of the evening. Malibu Schools Alignment Project, initial study number 19002, mitigated negative deck number 19001, coastal development permit 18065, conditional use permit 19003, lot merger 19001, an application for the construction of 8 portable classrooms, 1 portable administration building, 1 portable restroom on Point Dume Marine Science Elementary School site in order to combine the Juan Cabrillo Elementary students at the Point Dume site. Disclosures.
I spoke this morning with representatives of the district, but we discussed the general outlines of the staff report, and there was nothing that's not in the staff report that was discussed.
Okay.
Apart from that, my wife taught at the school for many years. My daughter-in-law teaches at Juan Cabrillo and will be moving to the school. So I have a long association with the school, but other than that, nothing that would keep me from rendering a fair opinion on the issue at hand.
Ben, we're going to get a staff report before you get a chance to speak, so you can stand up there or grab a seat, whichever makes you comfortable. All right, anybody else, any other disclosures?
Yes. I had a conference call with Craig Foster and Steve Massetti on Friday. I learned a number of things that aren't in the report. Despite the existing building being designed for 600 students, they can't create the ideal classroom size for 350 students by remodeling or moving interior partition walls or anything along those lines. I learned that phase one really has to be temporary for a wide variety of reasons that we may or may not need to get into. That phase two is even less definite than I first thought. It's spec'd as a two-story building, but they actually prefer a one-story structure. They have a tight timeline. They don't want any continuances, so hopefully if we can do something tonight, that will help them. I learned that the staggered bell solution to traffic is not ideal because it plays havoc with their busing plan to have kids coming and going in two different groups. I learned that the memorial trees are supposedly an urban myth, but I also learned from Planner Brooks that that designation is real, but that documentation about it burned up in the Woolsey fire, and I'll be eager to hear more about how that could have happened. And I spoke with Commissioner Marks. We identified a number of CEQA categories that appear to have incomplete information.
Commissioner Marks.
Got it. So yeah, as stated, I did talk with Commissioner Hill on this. I did meet with Steve Massetti as well as Craig Foster on the phone. Beyond what Craig had already shared for some of the observations, we did also talk a bit, that is Steve, Craig and I talked a bit also about just potential traffic impacts, which I do want to try to bring up in the discussion here. Other than that, nothing beyond what was in the staff report.
Was there some information you learned beyond what was in the staff report?
We talked through some numbers, which I do want to share, just rough estimates of what the distances, what the miles impact could be per year. So I did want to talk that through in the public comment.
Okay, well, what did you speak in broad terms about what it is so that the public could be informed?
So roughly speaking, we did kind of back envelope map saying if there's a difference in distance between the current school and the new school students will go to, what would be the rough number of miles per year expected from that shift in students, making some assumptions behind that.
And what was that number?
Something like 1,200 miles per student. So then depending on exactly how many students are displaced by this change, how many would have to have that longer drive. Some will have a shorter, some have longer. It was nothing definitive, but more just back of the envelope.
This is a rough estimate that you discussed with the district?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Commissioner Massa.
I met with Steve Euring and Steve Massetti and Craig Foster for about 2 or 3 hours, going over the whole report. Nothing that was not in the report, other than some numbers on school attendance. The numbers I got were Malibu High, 1,050, Juan Cabrillo, 185, Point Doom, 195, and Webster, 220. I also met today with Trevor Rusin. First, about sort of confusing, but how temporary buildings were dealt with in the LIP. And I was told basically they aren't in this case. To talk to Craig George, so I went and talked to Craig George, and he basically said, yeah, there's some stuff we're supposed to look at, but basically we aren't in charge of most of this. It's the school district. So we'll have to define that. I didn't get anything definable to tell you that we can't figure out in this meeting.
Commissioner Jennings, your daughter, you said, would be affected by this move. Did you discuss this with her? And would it be a positive or negative effect on your daughter?
I certainly discussed the combination of the two schools together and also her joining in that move. What was the rest of your question?
Whether it would be a positive or negative effect, or it would have some influence on your decision about how it would affect her.
No, I assume that if this merger doesn't go forward, that Juan Cabrillo will continue to exist as a separate school and she'll be teaching there. But apart from that,
Okay, no other effect on,
I don't think so, no.
okay.
Okay, and along with Commissioner Mazza, I met with Steve Massetti and Craig Foster. We sort of covered the items that John talked about, and it just gave me a better perspective of what's going on at the school, you know, what sort of the mindset of the school district was in terms of helping us resolve some of these problems, and it was a very productive meeting. Didn't learn anything new, but we got a sense of that we could work this thing out, which I thought was good. Okay, a staff report, please.
Before we start that, I just wanted to make sure we have all the public speaker slips.
I've got, okay, the speaker slips that I have are,
I just want to make sure that if anybody's attending the meeting for the first time, they understand about
okay,
submitting a
then
slip.
let me
and-
just, okay, let me restate. If you're going to speak this evening, or you're going to give your time to somebody else, you have to fill out a speaker slip. There are speaker slips in the table in back. If you give them to the young lady up here, she will keep track of who's speaking. And we'll make sure we give you a chance to get up and say your piece and go from there. I've got four speaker slips. A Patrick Miller, who's that? Okay. A Rory Israel. Okay. Pat. Karras. And Marie Taffy. Very good. That's all. One more. Okay, and those are speaker slips I have, so if you would like to speak, you gotta get some, we got time, you can get into those people, we'll make sure we give you a chance to talk. Okay, and your team is gonna also have to put together a speaker slip so we know who is doing what, right? Everybody cool? Staff report, please.
Yes, good evening, Chair, Euring, and Planning Commissioners. This item before you is the consideration of CDP 18-067, which is the first phase for the Malibu Schools Realignment Project, located at 6955 Fernhill Drive. Included in this coastal development permit request are two discretionary requests, one of which is a conditional use permit to allow for the public education institution to operate in the institutional zone. As indicated in your staff report, this site has kind of fluctuated with different uses. Originally constructed as an elementary school, and at some point was used as a community center where the County of Los Angeles issued a conditional use permit to allow for that use. That conditional use permit was renewed by the city of Malibu in the 90s, and eventually the school site was converted back to an elementary school. That use, we don't have any record that the elementary school use obtained a conditional use permit, hence this request for that CUP to not only allow for the continued use, but to also allow for the expanded use of the school. The site is also located across 4 legal lots. So we have, the school district has agreed to merge the lots to create 1 legal lot for the school site. This slide presents the chronology for the Malibu School Alignment Project. Back last year in May of 2018, the school district agreed to combine the Juan Cabrillo campus with the Point Dume campus. Juan Cabrillo is approximately 3 miles to the west of the Point Dume school site. Shortly thereafter, a draft initial study was completed by the school district, who served as the lead agency for the project. The initial study circulated for 20 days between September 28th through October the 18th of last year. In the middle of that review period, the school district also facilitated a community meeting in an effort to engage conversation about the environmental impacts identified in that draft document. The Board of Education eventually adopted the final mitigated negative declaration, which included an erratum, and in that erratum includes the compiled comments on the draft document. It included the school district's response to those comments, and it also included some clarification on some technical errors in the initial study. That document, I believe, should be included in the complete final document adopted by the school board. And shortly thereafter, the school district submitted their CDP application on December 28th of last year. This graphic is the existing campus, kind of starting from the south. There's a visitor parking lot, which will be reconfigured as a part of this application. Let's see. We have Fernhill Drive to the east. You can't see it, but Gray Fox is to the north. On the northeast corner of the school site is a multi-purpose field known as Cameron Park. In the middle of the school site are blacktops and asphalt for physical education opportunities. And as you can see, the administration and classroom buildings are clustered on the western portion of the project site. The project description includes the transfer of approximately 185 students from the Juan Cabrillo campus to the Point Dume campus. To accommodate the transfer of those students, the application includes the construction of several modular buildings, all at 12.5 feet in height. In those modular buildings includes one 36 by 40 foot classroom to be used for a kindergarten class. The application also includes the construction of 7 modular buildings with the dimensions of 24 by 40 feet. There's an administration building that's proposed, which will be 36 by 40 feet. And also included is the construction of a modular restroom with the dimensions of 12 feet by 40 feet. All of which propose the additional gross floor area as 9,440 square feet. Also included is in this application is exempt grading, 4,300 of which is removal and recompaction to create a stable building pad for the portable buildings. Also proposed are a little over 1,200 cubic yards of understructure grading, and there's approximately 163 cubic yards of safety grading. This application also includes interior improvements to Building A to create a special education suite. There's a shade structure to be replaced at the school site. And as stated in your staff report, the reconfiguration of the visitor parking lot. Now, this is a site plan to show the different components of the development. As you can see, again, at the bottom, on the southern portion of the property is the visitor parking lot, where all of the student drop-off and pickups take place. The blue shaded areas are the proposed locations for the modular buildings. And there's a little small modular building to the left, which will serve as a kindergarten classroom. The green shaded areas are the areas where interior improvements are proposed in Building A. And as included in the reconfigured parking lots, there's an existing, and I'll get into this a little bit later. I have a slide that will specify and go into a little bit more detail the on-site circulation changes that will be made to the site. Also included in this application, again, is the lot merger. This is the configuration of the existing 4 legal lots, all of which will be merged to create 1 legal lot. So during the process of this application, there's been a lot of effort with the school district working with the city's Public Works Department to address concerns for on-site circulation. Originally, the application included minimal changes to the parking lot. The existing parking lot has one driveway approach that's used for both ingress and egress. And during staff's processing this application, we've made multiple site visits to the site just to get an idea of the existing circulation, on-site circulation during peak times of drop-off and pickup. Staff noticed that there were some safety concerns regarding the existing configuration where the one driveway is used for both ingress and egress. So as a part of minimizing potential impacts to on-site circulation, the city advised the applicant to make modifications to convert the one driveway to be ingress only, and then to create a second driveway approach, which is to the south of the existing driveway, to be used as egress only. As a part of modifications to the parking lot, there's going to be paving markings to demonstrate the flow of traffic, partly to discourage people from exiting in the ingress driveway, and to also just help parents understand the flow of traffic. Also a part of the efforts that the applicant has made to address the on-site circulation issues and working with the city's Public Works Department. Another measure or condition was identified to require the use of additional staff during the peak times for student drop-off and pickup. The use of additional staff is an effort to decrease the amount of time that cars are stalled during drop-off and pickup, and it's a known practice to serve on-site circulation issues that might arise at school sites. So as a part of this application, typically staff requires the placement of story poles to reflect sighting, height, and massing of buildings, but school's in session, so we can't have story poles at the school site. So the applicant has graciously prepared these photo sims to demonstrate the what you would see from Fernhill Drive. And although it's not considered a scenic road, we did want to consider what is visible from Fernhill. So this is the existing view from Fernhill, showing the existing site conditions. And this is the proposed view from Fernhill. Again, you'll see the modular buildings in the backdrop, the additional driveway to the south of the existing driveway approach. The site has several native trees that are clustered around the location where the improvements are proposed. There have been multiple efforts to avoid impacts to native trees, one of which is the western sycamore. And as the applicant has made multiple attempts to design a project that avoids adverse impacts to native trees, there is one tree that will be removed as a result of the placement of the modular buildings. That tree is, I guess, highlighted in green. It's about 24 feet in height with a diameter of about 10 inches. The applicant has the opportunity to either replant 10 trees for the one lost tree or to pay an in-lieu mitigation fee. And this is included as a condition of approval for the coastal development permit. Now, I really tried to find the exact model of the modular buildings proposed, and I couldn't find it. So here are some examples of modular classroom buildings. The lower building is actually one of the buildings that's used by the designer of the modular buildings for this application, and then the upper building is a common modular building that school districts use. To date, staff has received one piece of correspondence from Metro. I believe that information was forwarded to you. I was able to have a follow-up conversation with the Metro staff that drafted that letter, and in an effort to get an understanding of what the letter was, if there was anything specific that they had a concern about. And it sounds like that letter was really like a boilerplate list of guidelines to be considered for properties that are in close proximity to a school bus stop. And having the conversation with the Metro staff, they didn't realize there was an environmental document that was done to analyze the project and potential impacts to circulation and traffic. I did advise the staff that there is a mitigation measure that calls for the movement of the bus stop. There's a bus stop. I didn't point that out on the site plan. I apologize for that. But there's a bus stop on the southwest corner of Gray Fox and Fernhill Drive. Eventually, the staff was able to review the environmental document and followed up stating that they did not have any concerns regarding this particular application, and that, the applicant is welcome to request the removal of that bus stop should there be a need to further address any circulation issues along Fernhill. And with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the initial study and mitigative declaration, approving Coastal Development Permit 18-067 and the associated discretionary request. And that does conclude my presentation, and I am available for any questions.
Okay, Renee, thank you very, very much. Thank you very, very much. Commission questions before we go?
Wait for comments.
Jeff?
Bonnie, it might be useful to give us a little bit of an overview of the various responsibilities we have, since we're not the lead agency for CEQA purposes, and how the CEQA process interfaces, if it does, with the coastal development process.
Thank you. That is a good suggestion. School district projects are a little bit different than our typical coastal development permits because the city is serving in a responsible agency role for purposes of California Environmental Quality Act. The city will be processing the coastal development permit, as you've heard, and that is reviewed for consistency with the local coastal program. We are also conducting CEQA review. However, that is through the form of the school district being the lead agency, meaning that they are the project proponents and have prepared the initial study and mitigated negative declaration. So the Planning Commission's role here is to consider the CEQA document and whether that adequately meets the requirements of CEQA for purposes of approving the project through the coastal development permit. The other thing that's kind of unusual here is that for a school project, the school is subject to, any school project is subject to the Division of State Architect for the plan check, permitting, and inspection process. So this project will not be going through our normal building safety plan check process. Because there's a coastal development permit involved, staff will be conducting a final inspection to make sure all those conditions of approval are met. But after the coastal development permit is approved, then the school district will work with the Division of State Architect on all the permitting and inspections.
Bonnie, thank you very much. John?
I've got an additional disclosure. I forgot. I'm on the board of the Pointum Services District, which is a county agency, and we managed the school when it was closed for about 10 years. And so I was there when the school took over the management of the school district. And from then on, I've had absolutely nothing to do with the operation of the school.
Commissioner Mazza, is it correct that that organization has no interest in the property at this point in time and has no role managing or
That's correct.
relation to it?
We are not involved.
Okay.
I did have one more disclosure as well, and a question to Bonnie. First on the disclosure, I did mention during the discussion that I had with the applicant team just about Waveside Church, which I didn't see mentioned in the documentation, and they said there was no impact to their operations in there. And then second, just to Bonnie, that state architecture review, does that have to happen on the temporary structures as well, or only phase 2?
It happens on all the structures that are used for students.
And has that happened yet, or that's gonna happen after this?
I don't know if they've started, they've probably, I see nodding, I'm sure that they'll let you know where they're at with that process.
Thank you.
Okay, and the only thing I have, Brianna, in your staff presentation, you mentioned the kindergarten site at the high school, or at the school up in Point Dume. So maybe as you guys present, you could sort of give us an idea if that's still there, if it's gone, because I didn't see anything of that inside the staff report. So just so we know what's going on with that one. In addition to that, I received a request from the applicant for additional time. And they've asked for up to 30 minutes, maybe not take all of that. And that would include a presentation by the superintendent, by their lawyer, and closing with Craig Foster. So I asked the commission, what do you think we should do?
That's fine with me.
Okay, anybody disagree with that?
I would like if the public needs additional time, they be given the same.
See what kind of consideration we can get for them. We don't want to stretch this
You don't
out.
mean up to 30 minutes, you mean some additional time for each
We'll-
comment?
we will acknowledge the fact that the public has a comments in this thing and make sure we take care of
So you may give an extra minute or two
Make
to.
something, okay. Okay, you got a question? Go ahead, please.
I have a lot that hopefully will be answered throughout all of this, but I'm dying to know what the backstop here is. If there was a decision, a denial or a continuance, or I know that there's a lot of impetus coming from what's happening on the high school and the Cabrillo site, what's going on there, sort of driving what's happening here. What happens there if there's a no? What are the implications, the consequences?
Okay.
Commissioner Hill, I just want to caution you that the decision tonight needs to be based on whether you can make the findings for the project as proposed, not, you shouldn't consider what would happen.
I'm asking the question because several people have told me that this has to happen, politically, economically, educationally, that there's no choice. And I don't like being told that, even sort of anecdotally, that we have no choice. So I'm just
Well,
sort of
Commissioner Hill,
curious what the
Commissioner Hill,
implications of a choice
you
would
do
be.
have a choice, and you need to evaluate the information before you and whether you can make the findings for this project or not, regardless of what alternatives are presented to you by the district. So
Okay.
please keep that in mind.
Okay, anybody else?
I did have
Commissioner
one more
Marks.
quickly for Anika. Just to clarify, you mentioned that there is a bus stop. Is that just southwest of the corner of Gray Fox and Fernhill? Did I hear you right? Okay, thank you for clarifying.
All right, all that said, the applicants have 30 minutes to present. Try and keep it to that if you can. So who's up first? The applicant team, as I understand it, is going to be Dr. Draki, Stan, and Craig Foster. That if there are additional members, we've got speaker slips for, but my understanding they're here primarily to answer any questions we may have as we go along. Is that right?
And do we want to advise that they save some time for rebuttal?
No, there's no rebuttal, 30 minutes.
Okay, so,
No, they're the applicant, they can reserve time for rebuttal.
yeah, so
Okay,
just,
so the point he just made, that if you think there's going to be opposition and you want to save a little bit of time at the end of your 30 minutes for some rebuttal, you have the opportunity to do that. That said, you're on.
Good evening. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Good. My name is Ben Drati. I am the superintendent of Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District. And I've recognized your names in all the transactions I've had the last 3 years or 2.5 years. So it's good to place a face with the names here. So it was good meeting you. Well, today I hope to provide some context and maybe explain and answer some of the questions when somebody says this has to happen. I don't think they meant literally, but I hope to explain the momentum that has taken place to get us to this place. And that's probably where that comment came from. And then I'll pass it on to our legal counsel to talk about some of the processes. So I'll talk about chronologically where we've been and why we're even doing this, or why it's important to us as a district and for the students of Malibu. In school year 17-18, the staff and I approached the board about going after another bond, a school bond, in the November 2018 ballot. knowing the conditions of our schools in Santa Monica and Malibu, that we needed to do this. And so during that process, maybe I was naive in understanding the relationship in terms of bonds with Santa Monica and Malibu, but I quickly recognized that if I didn't address the concerns between Santa Monica and Malibu with certain feelings about the bonds in the past, that this, it was going to be a battle to try to get something passed in November. So with that said, we got creative and established what we call 2 separate SFIDs within one district, meaning Malibu can have its own school bond and Santa Monica has its own school bond, and both communities would have to vote to pass the bond. And the board approved that, and we went forward with the whole idea. But during that process, there was a lot of conversations before the board made that approval to go 2 separate bonds. I have a lot of conversations with people in Santa Monica about what they expected with what we would do with their money, and the same with Malibu. Malibu was a lot more complex, I've came to realize, because I don't know if the question ever came to him, say, if you had your own bond, what would you do? I mean, that was a pretty interesting conversation. So obviously a lot of conversations occurred, and I had my own ideas about what schools should look like in terms of instructionally, which I'll touch on a little bit here. But one of the main issues is in Malibu is if you, I noticed it when I first got here, because that was the first campus I visited, is just where's the front office? Where's the middle school? Where's the configuration is just confusing to me, something I wasn't used to. It seems like it was just kind of thrown together. First, problem number one. And then secondly, through my years here, this complexity about dealing with the PCB issue on that campus was always there in our faces. And we always had this past job of trying to fix it without really eliminating it. So the idea that the community wanted the PCBs removed forever was another piece that Malibu was interested in. And then lastly, just reorienting education in Santa Monica and Malibu to more of a 21st century learning. And so I talked to both communities about ideas of project-based learning and how we have to prepare our students for the future and how that looks. And you all, I'm sure you guys have kids and see what's happening around the world, but it's complex out there right now. I mean, things are ever changing with technology, with all the changes in the world, this global market. Our students have to be equipped by the time they leave here, and when they go to college, prepared to take on those challenges. And how we teach impacts what they learn and how prepared they are. So we visited a lot of schools as a community, to teachers, board members, to a lot of different schools that have reshaped their curriculum, reshaped their buildings to support the curriculum around project-based learning, and how you can actually prepare students for that world and college and career in that way. So a lot of those environments require a certain collaboration efforts that exist between students. I think in this situation, you can have schools that are too big and way too small. And the schools in Malibu are small. And somebody asked me the other day, how come we don't have the same level of programming we have at Samuel High versus Malibu High? Yeah, size. The more students, the more teachers, the more things, you can do a lot more. And you can scale that down to the elementary schools as well. So Point Dume and Cabrillo are small. And when we talk to teachers about some of these ideas that's coming forward, when we asked them if they wanted to combine, because we can certainly do some things on the Malibu campus to expand it and create the environment we need. At the same time, we can also take Cabrillo and merge it with Point Dume and create the learning environment we want in terms of numbers and the structure. Point Dume is geographically is as big as one of my biggest elementary school, which is Franklin geographically. But Franklin houses 800 students, and Point Dume is about 80 something, 200. So we can do a lot on that campus, so all of this all of this was predicated on a bond, that Malibu would have to pass a bond for all of this to come forward. And Craig Foster and I we went on a tour for several months, just talking to different stakeholders. I never heard one resistance, but to say, go, 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 go do it, go do it. The few voices of concern we were able to meet with, I think we quickly answered those questions, but people were excited. The teachers were excited, so much to where Malibu passed a $195 million bond by about 72%. Now that's huge. So not too many school districts are able to pass a bond that big with that amount of. So there's momentum moving forward. The momentum was so much to where the community actually wanted me to execute this year, meaning to spend 3 months to merge the schools and start this year. I pushed back hard on that, and obviously we're here now. So we got a lot of plans for this for the district here. Another thing we did at the high school and middle schools, we separated the schools. Right now there's it's a 6-12 system. We separated out, and it's going to have its own middle school. We just appointed a principal about a couple months ago, and then we'll have a separate. So it'll be disjointed from the high school, because we think that the middle school needs its own identity and somewhere to really have a focus on the middle school, while there's a direct focus on the high school. Obviously, there'll be articulation, and then between the 2 elementaries that are left in Malibu and the schools, I think we can have a special district here. And my goal is to bring back some of your kids. You have a lot of kids that are not here anymore. They're in Oaks Christian and all these different places. Not your kids, but our kids. We just need to bring them back. And obviously there's implications on the cost of living here, but I also know there's a lot of students that are living here not going to our schools. And I think a part of the motivation behind this is to really make sure that our schools are shining stars and people are proud of it. In all of these efforts, we hope to eliminate PCBs 100% once and for all in the Malibu High School campus. So people so far, like I said, people are excited about why we're doing what we're doing. So I think that's what somebody meant by this has to happen. I don't think they meant literally that it has to be, we got to force you to do it. It's just that we know we have a lot of momentum headed this way. There's a lot of excitement. It would be disappointing to get a no. This process here, this is phase 1. We just need some portables to get going, and eventually we have an entire master planning process which involves the community, different stakeholders, in developing and building that school, and building all the schools in Malibu. So that's coming, but this step is necessary for us to continue to go. With that said, I'll pass this on to the legal counsel to talk about some of the steps that we have taken, and all the nuances that you guys understand and they understand. So with that said, I will invite Mr. Stan Bernikowitz. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but thank you.
Good evening, Stan Barankowitz on behalf of the district, legal counsel for the district. And I'm going to go through the slides with you about the project, and we'll be touching on a few things that you've already talked about in the main presentation, but we'll add some more flavor to what's going on. So this is to basically give you an introduction, talk about the project description, a little bit more about the district's CEQA, and then what we've been doing with the city with the entitlements. So as you've seen in the city slide, here's the Point Dume location. And this one's oriented more with the Google Earth. It's got the Fern Hill on the bottom side, and then Gray Fox on the right-hand side. They're surrounding the school site, and you can see the school buildings go all the way back. The school buildings go all the way back to this point here and abut up the residential here, but all of this is all school buildings that are already in place. This here is the schematic of the existing buildings. It shows the buildings on the site, the buildings back here, and then the parking lot here, Cameron Park here, and then here are the row of trees, the pear trees, and then the one sycamore at the end. Okay, let me. So the project is the consolidation of the, for this location, is consolidation of the Juan Cabrillo Elementary School with Point Dume. And what it entails is 10 temporary portables that are approved by DSA. They are school classroom buildings. And 8 of them will be classroom portables that include 1 kindergarten. Then there's also the 1 administration portable, and then 1 restroom portable, all nestled in the center of the campus. And then, in addition, we have now agreed to providing the exit-only driveway to Fernhill Drive, as well as widening the driveway into the campus to provide both the drop-off as well as parking coming into the parking lot. And then also we've included and accepted the fact that we would provide a drop-off and pickup coordination plan, basically being the staff members that will help students to exit and enter their vehicles so that the parents don't have to get out and they can quickly speed up the process, the dwell time at the curb sections. So the project here, you can see this color-coded. We've got the portables here in the center part of this. We have additional hardscape that goes around them, and the portables face each other through here along with the administration building. And then over here we have the kindergarten portable here with the new stage structure. And then we have access way for fire, life, and safety. And then we show the intersection improvements down here for the parking lot. And then also we've got the the stormwater system that runs a pipe down here, and then we have a detention basin, and then it's fed off site after if there's too much flow that can't be repercolated on site. And then also we have, as part of this project, some interior renovation work only that's shown in yellow above there. So that's it. This is a rather modest little project in phase 1 to just get these school kids in, put it central on the campus to avoid impacts to the neighbors and surroundings, and that's the way it's laid out. Okay, so a little bit on the project metrics here. We have 195 current students, and the maximum the amount of the post-project is at 380. That's what our expected is, and then of course the permitted amount is the 450 here. We currently have 15 full-time faculty and staff with 21 part-time. For the 380 student project, which was expected, we would have the 34 full-time and the 40 part-time staff members. Now that, just because there's part-time staff members doesn't mean they're all gonna be there every day. It's a fluctuating thing. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less, but as the total number of part-time staff is what's reflected here. But they're not all gonna be on the site day in and day out. Some days there might only be 5 or 10, and other days there might be 25. So it's not a thing that we can define as an exact number that's going to be there day in and day out. It fluctuates based upon different events that are going on, as well as class schedules and that type, and union negotiations and those type of things. And then for the permitted amount, we would have 34 full-time and 46 part-time faculty and staff. So moving on, there would be currently there's a total of 18 classrooms. The new total would be 26. We're adding 1 special ed classroom. We're adding 1 special ed education resource room. The marine science lab stays the same. The multi-purpose room stays the same. The library stays the same. And the restrooms go up overall. one thing to note about the Marine Science Lab and the multi-purpose room, these are very large rooms, and they can accommodate the loading without change by combining the two campuses. There's no need to reconfigure those. But with that said, we're unable to use that space if there were to want to try to increase classroom space within the existing campus boundaries. The campus buildings, these kind of areas have to remain, even though they're very large spaces. They can't be chopped up into smaller spaces to make room for more classrooms. Then we have the same amount of nurse's office. We have teacher resource rooms. There'll be 4 in the post-project. There'll be the same amount of reception, same principal, there'll be an increase in 1 conference room, and there's the same amount of teachers' lounges, and the parking spaces remain the same. They do not change. So moving on, again, you've seen this figure already. This is the existing conditions as it looks today. And then you saw the daytime view with the portables and the new driveway. What you haven't seen is the nighttime view. Here's the existing nighttime view of the campus. And this would be with the project and with the new driveway. As you notice, there's no lights in the campus, in the portables, because the portables are facing each other and the lighting is on the interior part of it. So the lighting in large part will not be visible from any of the streets. It'll remain dark. And then also by the way, for the nighttime activity, we are also agreeing, I don't think it was mentioned, but we've agreed to the deed restriction that commits the district to meeting all the dark sky requirements, and the districts already have done that in the plans. And so as far as CEQA is concerned, the district prepared a mitigation deck. The review period ran from September 28th to October 18th. A public meeting was held on October 9th at the Point Dume Marine Science School, and members of the public got to come and speak. Mr. Massa was there and got to hear what was spoken about about the project and the environmental consequences. So the CEQA studies that we've done were the typical for mitigated negative declaration. We looked at air quality with greenhouse gases, biological resources, cultural resources, noise and traffic, all the usual suspects. And the MND determined that the following resources required mitigation, which was biological, cultural, noise, and traffic. This amounted to a total of 7 mitigation measures for these. There were 2 for bio, 2 for cultural resources, 1 for noise, and 2 for traffic. For the biological resources, this had to deal with both nest protection and tree protection. For nest protection, before a tree comes down, it has to be surveyed ahead of time to make sure that there are no nesting birds, and if there are, they allow the fledglings to get to a particular age and leave before a nest is destroyed. And this is prepared as an avoidance measure to make sure that there is no impact to any bird species that are using that for nesting purposes. Then in tree protection, we're adhering to the Native Tree Protection Ordinance for Malibu and the LIP, and we had a qualified biologist come out and examine not just the trees that were being impacted by the project, but the entirety of the campus to catalog all the trees. And for the 1 tree that will be removed, the district will pay an in lieu mitigation fee for that impact to the mitigation fund, in lieu of, because the requirement for replacement under the LIP is 10 trees per tree taken out. There simply is not enough room. Cameron Park is used as part of recreational activities for soccer, and we need that open space for those type of activities. So there just simply isn't the room on the campus for the mitigation trees. So we'll be opting for paying into the fund for the Santa Monica Conservancy to take care of those trees for the district, for this project. Under cultural resources and tribal resources, there'll be monitoring for Native American artifacts during any of the grading and ground disturbing activities. There'll be a professional can't even say it, archaeologist on site to evaluate the potential finds and then provide, and if any are found, for its proper disposition in consultation with the tribe. There'll also be monitoring for fossils during the grading and ground disturbing activities, and there'll be a paleontologist to salvage and catalog any finds that are found. We do not expect to encounter any of these things. These are just measures that are in place in case it happens to be discovered. As far as noise is concerned, the contractor will have a construction noise control plan that will detail how the contractor will make sure that that noise is limited as much as possible during the construction. There's not going to be a lot of what you would call the typical construction noises, because remember, these are portables. They're already built. They're just going to be brought onto site and installed. So you're not going to have the traditional framing and sheathing and that type of activity that's going to go on. We also note that we'll adhere to the municipal code's requirements on no construction on the nighttime hours on weekdays, and then no time on Sunday or city holidays, and then also during the evening hours on a longer period on Saturday evenings. Residents within 300 feet of the site will be alerted prior to the construction, and then we will have an ability to receive complaints and be able to act on them accordingly to get the contractor adjusted if we have any problems with that. Any stationary source noises will be shielded to the extent possible. They will be shielded, and to the extent we can keep noisy actions away from the edge of the campus, that will certainly be done. For the traffic, there's the two traffic issues. One, we have the traffic queuing, and we have mitigation for traffic for speeding. The first one on traffic queuing, we noted that there's sometimes queuing and there's sometimes not. That's why the district decided when it approved the MND is that they would have conditional mitigation for the traffic, because it wasn't clear from the multiple times that the traffic engineer went out there that there was a consistent queuing problem. Only on a couple of times was it noted that there was an issue, and then the other times there wasn't an issue with the queuing. So to make sure that we covered it, it was identified that the queue length at the time that there was the conflicts or the queue was developing, it was a 5-minute queue. And for the significance of threshold, it would be 2 minutes above that. So if it would increase beyond up to 7 minutes and beyond, then the mitigation would be implemented. And that would include the driveway widening that we had talked about before. That was part of it. And then that's the restriping of the existing driveway. We would have the potential for doing a staggered bell schedule. We'd have a secondary pickup and drop off more defined on Gray Fox, as well as the last item, potential busing from Juan Cabrillo over to the Point Dume School. And for the second mitigation measure on traffic speeds, we noticed that there were some speeding going on in the neighborhood. So we would install radar signs 1 month prior to its opening, conduct a 6 to 12 month speed monitoring for or after it opened, and then work with the city on any necessary traffic calming measures that would need to be done. And then the district received a number of comments on the public, and really the two main issues that were discussed was the traffic analysis and the queue mitigation, and then the tree removal. And the district provided written responses to those comments. That was included in the final MND, and that was accepted by the district. So now November 1st came along. That's when the district approved the MND and the project. That was the approval of both phase 1 and phase 2 of the project from an environmental standpoint. And then the district filed its application for phase 1 because phase 2 is not designed. So the only time we can get a permit from you is if we have a fully designed a project to present to get signed off on plans. And so the only thing that we have that had time to do and put together was the plans for the Phase 1 portion. And so we've accepted the new driveway exit. We've accepted the valet on the drop-off and pickup, the native tree mitigation as part of new conditions of approval. We've also accepted the fact that we'll do the lot merger, although that we think that's not that important because already the county had tied the parcels together, gave it one APN number. So as far as we're concerned, they're already tied, and you link it to an APN number on permit requirements for enforcement, and you already have it. So then now all we're here to do is to help you, provide you the substantial evidence that you need to make your CEQA findings and your findings under the LIP and the Muni Code. And if you award this tonight to us, give us the permits, we'll be able to start construction on May 10th. And we hope to finish it, or we will be able to finish it by August 16th in order to start school. And now I'd like to introduce Craig Foster.
Okay, guys, you got 2 minutes left, so time management. You could just, if you want, save that time for rebuttal then? Yes, please. Okay. Kathleen, you could keep track of that, please. Okay. Excellent. You guys have brought up a lot of questions I didn't have before we started. Let's go to some, now we've got, let me just, give me a second to screen through these things. Steve Massetti, you're, okay, traffic consultants, only if we need you. Julian Capata, if we need you. Jeffrey Fuller, if we need you. And Carrie Upton, if we need you, right? Okay. And we got Patrick Miller, he's part of the applicant team.
Applicant team is part of the original presentation.
I'm saying Patrick Miller, is he? Okay, so that's another one. If we need you, we'll call you. Is that how that works? Just want to make sure everybody's on the same piece of sheet music. All right, let's go to some speaker slips.
Questions, okay.
Anybody have questions before we open it up to the speakers?
Plenty, but later.
Okay. All right.
I would like to give 4 minutes to each speaker.
Well, let's just wait and see what we need before we, okay. Rory Israel, you're first. Yeah, and Rory, after Rory is Pat Carnes. Okay, if you would sort of come up to the front and get ready, and then following Pat is Mary Taffley. I apologize, if I'm bumbling these names, I apologize, but. Okay, just grab a seat up front so when Rory's done, we can keep going. You're on.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for giving me some time to speak. My name is Rui Israel. I'm a parent of a 3rd grader at Point Doom and a 6th grader at Malibu Middle. I'm here to voice my support for this plan and asking you to approve it. I've been in Malibu schools since my daughter was in kindergarten at Point Doom, and I'm very proud of being a Malibu resident, and I think that our schools need a lot of help. And I've been working on behalf of the schools through PTA, through AMPS, through Malibu Schools Leadership Council since I started when my daughter was in kindergarten. And I have a lot of confidence in Dr. Drotti's plan and support, and it's a long time coming. We've had a lot of bumps in the road. So like Dr. Drotti said, a lot of our Malibu students are in other schools. They're over the hill, and by losing all these kids, we're just doing a disservice to our community. So we need to bring back kids. We need to have schools that are 21st century, that are going to be places that kids want to go to. So I know the district hired a planning company to come in and do some schematics for what we could do on the Malibu High campus, which would mean taking the Juan Cabrillo property along with the Malibu High property and making it a cohesive place where children can learn in a good environment. They actually evaluated all the buildings at Juan Cabrillo Malibu High from a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst quality and 5 being the best. And they advised us on Friday that most of the buildings are 1s. And it's depressing, but, I talked to my daughter today, and we go through, what was the best part of your day, what the worst, and she said, Mom, I had a great day at school today, and I love hearing that. My kids love to go to school, but they're just gonna love it so much more if we are able to do this for them. And it will help all of Malibu, because as a property owner here, the more kids we bring in here, the more people that want to move here, the better it is for everybody. I know there's some concern that there's going to be more traffic in the area of Point Dume, but let's also think about the traffic that exists currently on Morning View and Malibu Park. All those kids have to go somewhere. So they're either jammed into Morning View and Guernsey and all that, or some of them are going to be alleviated from that area, going to come into Point Dume. Point Dume used to house over 300 kids, and we're not looking at increasing it that much more. So it's not an area that's not used to that amount of people. So that's all I have.
Rory, thank you.
Thank you.
We've not met, but I've heard your name mentioned. I know you've been active in the schools for a while, so
Oh, no
thank you very
problem.
much for coming up. Okay, Pat.
Thank you very much. My name is Pat Cairns. I'm the interim principal at Point Dume Elementary School. I've worked for the district since 1973. I live here in Malibu. My daughter went through school here in Malibu and Santa Monica High School. I am a strong believer in the school district. I'm a strong believer in public education. And I think one of the things that has made Malibu the place that it is that we have really wonderful schools. And Rory's right, we do have schools that need rebuilding and redoing, but we have outstanding teachers who are totally dedicated to what they do. And I can tell you that they do support this project. And the whole idea of bringing these two schools together to create what I think is going to be a totally amazing school. I tell you, these teachers are so talented and they're so hardworking. I'm working with them now as helping to plan the merger as we go toward the end of the school year. And I've only been there 6 days, but I've spent a lot of time at both schools. I was principal at Cabrillo, assistant principal of Malibu High School, and I've been to Point Dume 7 times as interim principal. So I know these teachers, I know this community, and I know that we need to have your approval. And Mr. Hill, I don't think anyone is really saying you have to do this. I mean, we want you to do the thing that you think is best for our community and for our children. We've been through an awful lot this year. We've had so many children who have left because their homes were burned. My home was burned in the fire. So I understand what these parents are going through. I understand the feelings that these children have and how they desperately really need to know that next year they have a school that they can go to, and this school needs to be ready for them. So I ask you to think about our children and our community and what it will do for all of us if we join together and we support this merger. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, Mary, you're up next, followed by Deborah. Okay, Kramer, followed by Stephanie Rocco. So if you folks are here, come sit by the front. We'll just keep the meeting going. You're on.
Hi. I'm a teacher at Point Dume, or at Juan Cabrillo Elementary School. I used to be also a teacher at Point Dume. I've been in the community for 25 years, and my son went through Webster, Malibu Middle, and Malibu High School, and I'm here tonight to ask you to support the merger. From someone who's on the front lines, I can tell you the kids are really excited about it. The teachers are excited about it. But for the kids more specifically, when we expand the student body, they have more opportunities to build friendships and learn about different people, and it would be really good for them. And for teachers, it'll be really nice for us to have more teachers at our grade level so that we can collaborate together. And overall, I think it's just going to bring the community together in a way that's really powerful for all of us. So I'm asking you tonight to approve the measure. Thank you.
Mary, thank you very, very much. Deborah?
Hello, my name is Deborah Lagorce Kramer. I am a resident of Point Dume and have been for more than 25 years. I live next to the school, and I was the traffic Nazi at the elementary school when our daughter went through the elementary school. Chris Jennings was her 4th and 5th grade teacher. The sign that you've all used to lead many of the presentation pages that I've seen here, the Cameron Park sign was actually created by the kids in her graduating 5th grade class, and all of the kids wrote their signatures on the bottom in the sand. So the school's a very sentimental memory for our family and for me and for my husband. And I was very concerned about traffic because the Gray Fox Hill is very tempting to people. I live on the corner that has 2 stop signs where 90% of the time no one stops, certainly not a complete stop. And if you coast through those stop signs, by the time you get to the Gray Fox Gate, which is right below the teacher parking lot, you will kill the child. There is an 85% chance you will seriously injure and possibly kill an adult, just coasting. So we did, and some of the people sitting up here were very familiar with that process. There was a lot of resistance in the community because it felt like gentrification, but in fact, in the old days, kids had been able to walk to school across neighborhood yards without fences, without gates, even in the canyons themselves. And the new kinds of residents created a different kind of environment that didn't allow that. So having a place where they could ride a bike or walk safely, kids as well as seniors, was really, really important. It was a struggle to get them put in place. It's not ideal what's happened. There are complicated reasons for it, but it was free money from the feds, and it was a beginning. And the Gray Fox Gate consistently was a problem in terms of traffic backlog. Entering the parking lot, exiting the parking lot, entering Point Doom, exiting Point Doom, all of those issues which have been mentioned, I can't stress enough how important it is to consider the impact of the numbers. When our daughter was in kindergarten through 5th grade, which was in the early 2000s, the school had finally gotten to what was called capacity, and the numbers of students were somewhere between 225 and 250, and some of those were siblings. And that really, really taxed our local community inside Point Doom. We don't have the infrastructure. I wonder where people are going to be able to park. I'm not opposed to a better school. I believe it's really important to separate the elementary schools and the middle school from the high school and the elementary schools. But the school district, I think, owns 50 acres near the high schools. Is it possible that that could be another location for an elementary school? Anyway, thank you very much, and please just consider the density issue. We don't have the infrastructure for emergency services, as well as for parking, as well as for the numbers of students, unless you can shuttle or plan something very dramatic that leaves from PCH at Zumarez and the parking lot at the shopping center. Thank you.
Deborah, thank you very, very much. Okay, Stephanie is going to be followed by Todd. Is there Todd here? Todd Doyce? There he's back there. Ann Russell Sugar. Follow him. Ann, is Ann here? Ann? Okay, grab a seat up front. Stephanie, you're on.
Yes, hello. My name is Stephanie Rocco, and I live on Gray Fox. I am directly across the street from the school. So I would like to reiterate what Deborah said. My concern is the traffic impact, as well as the environmental and the sound. We don't need to stagger the bell system and have all the residents hear bells all the time either. I'm concerned about the amount of parking. There's constantly people doing U-turns right in front of my house, pulling in the driveway. It's just insane with the hill, people speeding. So I'm very concerned about the traffic. And then as well as the site is used as a park. A lot of people like to come there and use it on the weekends. And so that's going to have, that should be taken into consideration too. So I just don't want this rush to move these schools because everyone's just thinking about the schools and not about the impact of the neighborhood, because it'll be forever changed by doing this. And so something to take into consideration. Thank you.
Stephanie, thank you very, very much. Todd, you're up.
Hello, thank you. My name is Todd Doyle. I'm a parent of 4 kids in the Malibu school district, 2 in the middle school and 2 at Juan Cabrillo. I just wanted to say that I was very impressed with the school district and the way that they seem to mitigate some of the concerns. Obviously, the community has very valid concerns about the increase in numbers, but I think what's lost a lot is just the impact on the children. The children need this. There's a lot of kids at our school that need a break, and I think this would be a good start. That's it.
Todd, thank you very, very much. Ann, you're up next, followed by Stephen Granick? Okay, and then Norm, you're up after that. You're on.
Hi, my name is Ann Russell Shargott. I'm a parent of 3 children in the district. One is in 6th grade, one is in 4th grade, and one is in will be in 3rd grade. So 2 would be going to this school. I'm speaking tonight to ask the commission to approve the permits in front of you for your consideration. Without the additional space detailed in the application, the practical result on campus may be increased class size, and that is my concern in that it may limit electives or the necessity of sharing spaces, which limits the amount of equipment, computers, all the resources that we need to go, the labs, to be online and have the technology to move to the next phase. Without the proposed administrative trailer, we would be, a big piece of that is to restructure the campus to have a single entry point for reasons of security so that people visiting the campus can't make their way so far into the perimeter before they're identified as being someone who should or should not be there. So that trailer is probably the one I feel the most passionate about. It will be positioned so that visitors have to have that checkpoint. And there's a large body of scientific research that exists that indicates that overcrowding in classrooms diminishes students' learning. It can reduce the quality of instructional planning, and it lowers morale among students and teachers. So if the applications were denied and the children were forced to kind of make do with the spaces that exist, there is an impact, or there may be an impact on test scores and grades, and students may experience anxiety. There's also more conflict and behavior issues when you have more kids squished into a small space. I feel there's limitless potential in the elementary school merger, but it can only be achieved if kids have the adequate space to learn and if there are enough spaces to offer the elective courses that are so important to our kids and those that we will be able to offer by having both all the resources pulled together of the 2 schools. And our kids and educators need and deserve these spaces to learn. Thank you.
And thank you very, very much. Stephen?
Good evening. My name is Stephen Grayheck, Dr. Stephen Grayheck, and I'm better known as Deborah Kramer's husband. But
I understand.
I've been an emergency medicine physician for 41 years, and I'm still board certified. I still practice. I've been at Point Dume 31 years, and I lived next to the school with my wife and formerly with our daughter, who went to the school and was fortunate enough to have Mrs. Jennings as a teacher and all the other teachers. Fabulous place. And I love the school. When I moved there, one of Stephanie, it wasn't Stephanie's neighbor at the time, but a woman that lived near there, loved the sound of feral peacocks mating in the springtime. Do you know what that sounds like? Anybody here?
I know what
Anybody
you're
want to?
talking about, though.
It sounds like a child screaming for help. It's help! That's what it sounds like. She didn't like the sound of the playground, though. She honestly didn't like the sound of the playground. Amazing. Anyway, I like the sound of the playground. I'm uphill, and it's one of the most luscious, wonderful sounds in the world. But I'm really worried. The traffic out there, they're not going to do enough because they haven't done enough before. They're not going to do enough in the future. Now we're going to have twice the number of students, actually more than twice the amount of traffic because all the other students are coming from off campus. My wife and Pete Anthony and Elizabeth Anthony worked like dogs to get those safe pathways to schools built, and people use them. But sadly, I imagine I may do it sometimes too, but my neighbors drive like idiots, absolute idiots. They are in cars that are completely silent from the road. They have no idea how fast they're going. They're on their phones. They go down that hill. I assure you, I've seen cars do 55 miles an hour into the school zone while school is in session. I mean, and I'm scared that one day I'm going to get arrested because I'll run out in front of them. I'll drive my car in front of them because it's unbelievable how bad it is. If you guys don't figure out how to educate the parents, we got a real big problem going on because you don't teach a 16-year-old how to drive when they're 16. You teach a 16-year-old how to drive when they're what age? 6, right? That's when kids learn how to drive a car. And they're being driven to school by these crazy-eyed, cell phone talking moms and dads. You know, and if we don't do something about that, I'm all for the school. I just think it's going to be a lot more traffic, and so you double the chance of a tragedy occurring. And I don't think the engineers came out there in the morning. You can come up and hide on our corner and watch the cars fly through the stop sign at 30 miles an hour without even tapping the brakes. So that's my only concern, is that I hope we have more kids. I just want you to protect them. And we need to do a better job protecting them. My daughter was so embarrassed. I got in the cars with all the black SUVs, but my vehicle was a 4-wheeled, full cutaway pony cart with 2 ponies. The first day I picked her up, you know, I pull in, my turn, she's across the parking lot, and I mean the playground that you're keeping. She looked at me, she had her bag on her shoulder, a lunch pail. She looked up at me and went, and then walked across so embarrassed. When she got in, she had tears in her eyes. Dad, why did you bring the horses? And I said, turn around. And there were like 15 kids wanting to get in with us. And we would drive them home. And I'm sorry, I used to remark, the cars in our neighborhoods, and this is 20 years, not quite 20, 15 years ago, cars in our neighborhoods would stop for my horse and buggy, but they wouldn't stop for a kid on a bicycle, an old lady pushing, or a young woman pushing a carriage, or an old lady walking. But, you know, something as bizarre as that, they would stop for. But we really need to do something about the traffic. That's all I want to tell you.
Stephen,
I hope the schools, it will be a success.
Stephen, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. Norm, you're up. And Norm is our last speaker. If anybody else would like to speak, if you'd fill out a slip, I'll let you do it. Otherwise, we'll close public comment after Norm.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I heard a lot said here today, but one thing I was listening for, and that was whether or not there had been analysis done on the wastewater treatment system. The capacity and the structural components of the existing tank. I know that approximately 15 years ago, as chairman of the Wastewater Advisory Committee, we reviewed the tanks, and the concrete seemed to be structurally sound. But these tanks have a tendency to collapse over time. The concrete actually decomposes over time as a result of the gases coming from the treatment tank. And I was hoping that they were going to consider putting in an advanced wastewater treatment system and making sure that it was large enough to handle all of the capacity that might be generated by the existing students and future students as well. So having said that, hopefully they'll comment on that. Thank you.
Norm, thank you very much. Anybody else like to comment? If not, the applicant has got another, what, almost 3 minutes for rebuttal? Anybody like to speak to that?
Just one quick response on the capacity of the septic system. That has been thoroughly analyzed and investigated and tested, and it can handle the load of a 600-student school. So it has great capacity.
So we have,
your name?
I'm sorry, Craig Foster. I'm Malibu's only school board member on the Santa Monica Malibu School Board. I think there's two really important objectives tonight. Objective one is we would very much like to leave this meeting with the ability to move forward on putting these portables in so we can make our deadlines for this school year. And the second thing is we want to continue the effort I think we've made since we started this realignment process, since Dr. Drotti came to the district, to be good neighbors to all of the people of Malibu. So as we move forward with this, at least from our part, and I think representing the entire district, we're very eager to make sure that we work with you, to work with the city. The staff report reflected how hard the district had been working to get to common ground. So we're looking forward to finding or having provided or additional things that we can provide to make sure that we are good neighbors to the community, because it's really important to us. Stephen talked about how kids learn from their parents. We want our kids to learn from how we're collaborative with the city and we're good citizens. So thank you.
Greg, thank you very, very much. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Yeah, let's.
Can I make one statement before that?
Good. John's gonna make a quick statement. We're gonna take a 10-minute break because we're getting older, and we'll continue after that. Greg, go ahead. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I hope you all stick around. This is going to be an unusual hearing because we're used to looking at city rules and looking at city developments. And in this case, it's a school district development, and we're just reviewing parts of it. So we're going to have a lot of questions and the inability to do a lot of things. So it may appear that sometimes we're anti-school or we're anti-resident, but what we're really trying to do is, we will try to do, at least I will, is the best for the school district, but also consider that we work for the city of Malibu, and there are residents in that area that we have to make sure that they are protected also. So I hope you stick around and listen and realize that this is not a standard planning commission hearing where we're just going by the rules, because we really don't have any in a lot of cases. Okay. Thanks.
All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Be back here at 8:20.
Also, please, no one approach the
Yeah,
commissioners. They can't speak
can't
about
talk to
this
you.
item since the public hearing is closed here. And also caution the commissioners, please do not speak with any members of the public during the break.
Done. Thank you, guys. do to make it? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call the meeting back to order. We're bringing up to the commission table. And commissioners, let me suggest an approach. There are a number of little buckets of items: traffic, protection of the park, archaeological, whatever. Okay, and I think as opposed to trying to cover them all at once, let's start with traffic. Let's go through and talk about what the traffic issues are going to be. Do we have suggestions for making it better? Maybe do a straw vote, and then before we maybe get the applicant to come up, and if they can suggest a better way to do it, let's see if we can't get that puppy solved before we go to anything else. So start with traffic. Greg, would you like to go first?
Actually, can I kick that one off?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Do you mind?
No, no.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add too that Adam Chase is here from the Public Works Department and can elaborate on the city side of the review if you need it.
Got it.
Perfect, and I want to.
Commissioner Marks, go.
Yeah, I just want to start by taking a look at, I don't think anyone has it handy in a deck, but in the MND, it was slide, or page, I think 20 or something, yeah, it's page, I don't know, 29 of 861 in that thing. It shows the school attendance boundaries, and just looking at the map and trying to guess where students would be coming from, since the Juan Cabrillo School is pretty far to the east of kind of the attendance boundary area, it looks like the majority of students are going to be coming from the west of Juan Cabrillo, so their drive is going to be an additional 3 miles kind of to get to Point du Marine Science, you know, to the new elementary location. So it doesn't sound like much, but when you add it up, that ends up being, if you know, you go there, you come back in the morning, you go there, you come back in the evening, 12 miles per student with 178 days per year, that ends up being something on the order of 2,100 miles per student per year. So I was just curious if there's been any kind of digging into how many students are to the west of the existing elementary that are going to now have to make that additional 2,100 miles per year. Do we have any sense of that, to get a sense of a kind of cumulative impact across the
Can I
something?
Can I add on to your question to just say that CEQA 15064.3 requires an assessment of vehicle miles traveled, and that was not in the report, and I know we talked about that on Friday, but maybe you've had time to look at that.
So yeah, if we could maybe start with that question.
Okay, I can answer that. So as far as vehicle miles traveled, we did not look at that because at the time, remember that the MND was approved on November 1st of 2018. the code section that you're referring to, 15064.3, did not become effective until December 28th of 2018. And so the district's action was already complete and had done the analysis. And there's a section on applicability that says that this section will apply prospectively in section C of that statute, or that guideline. And so it was not done.
So then another question on that is when we do consider phase two, what impacts do we consider at that time? Because I mean, this CUP will allow up to 450 students. So I assume then we would only look at incrementals above 450 when applying that section of CEQA in the future.
Okay, and I'm not an expert in this one, but I think if they come back with phase two, they need to update their environmental impact report. So we've got something else to look at. I don't think you can just take what we have here and apply it to phase two.
Right, when the phase two CDP application is ready, we would conduct another environmental review and determine what do we know now that we didn't know when the first initial study was done, and then fill in those gaps and about whatever that is.
But I want to restate my observation. So this CUP will allow up to 450 students. Presumably phase two won't exceed that. So we would not revisit this traffic study at the point of phase two, even though it would be effective CEQA at that time of approval.
Well, I mean, when phase two happens, we'll look at what is that going to change from the baseline.
The new baseline of 450 per the CUP.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I have a question on that. Question, Bonnie. I am going to have a hard time approving the MMD for phase two. They don't have, well, we're being asked to approve it tonight, correct?
No, we're not.
Yes, we are. We were told we were.
No, this is not the MND for phase two. This is for phase one only.
This is phase one, all we're talking
Their
about.
attorney presented us as phase one and phase two in this MND.
A CEQA document can cover a phased project, and so what you analyze what you know about the immediate phase one part of the project at a project level detail, and then when there's a future phase, you disclose what you know, because CEQA is a disclosure process. And so since we don't have an application for phase two in front of us, they're not going to, if it makes you feel better, they're not going to get by without doing the full CEQA analysis they would need for phase two.
So what he said,
Hang on, Stan, you agree with that?
Yes, because there will be subsequent environmental review.
Done.
What environmental document that becomes is going to be based upon the final.
well, let me ask you
final
this.
design.
You said the school board approved phase one and phase two MND. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, the
How can that
project, the
be?
project evaluated both phase one and phase two on the information, as Bonnie said, that was available to the district at the time of approval. It did not have the designs, so when the designs are done, then the district must go back and reevaluate, as Bonnie said, the changes that from the fully designed phase two compared to what was studied in the original document, and if there are changes need to be done, then it'll be, the analysis will be included in
So
the
how
new
does time
environmental
work in
document.
that? I mean, if it's 10 years from now, how are you going to evaluate traffic now for that? You don't know what the traffic is going to be. Not for your project, for the area.
Again, the traffic analysis as well as all the other environmental analysis only looks to see if there's a change in the project itself and how that's going to create changes to the project. You don't set a new baseline and evaluate it off that. You use the existing baseline in the original document, which is the one that the district approved in November.
So if the traffic quintuples between now and then, you don't look at that?
As if we're keeping the 450 student and not going higher than that, correct?
I got a hard time with that one.
That's an interesting concept, but look, I don't trust the traffic study any more than I have to, and I've watched a lot of them. I mean, it's a guess, all right? So
educated,
maybe. All right. So just traffic is a big issue, guys, and just up front, it's an issue we're going to be taking a close look at. We want to keep aware of what's going on. We want to make sure the residents are not being, run over down there. So moving forward, we're gonna want to see some studies that say, here's what's actually going on and how it's working. So if that's not an acceptable process, let us know.
No, we have no problem with evaluating things in the future. But let me just take one quick step back just so everyone understands, maybe this isn't very clear, that the road system right there on Fernhill and where the queue actually occurs is in its own dedicated lane. It is not blocking through traffic. That area is completely blocked to parking during the times of pickup and drop off. So vehicles that want to get through can. They can go straight through in either direction and not be stopped by the queue.
Well,
The queue is in its own.
I want to clarify one point.
Yeah, you're gonna have trouble with that argument too.
Yeah, it just, I mean, what gets my attention, and just rough numbers, because there's no study that's been done. If we assumed all 185 students do have to make that additional 12-mile trip per day, that's almost 400,000 miles per year that are introduced in that, that 3-mile corridor, however you want to phrase it. So I don't see it just as an issue with queuing, which we can get to, but I just want to call out, I'm concerned about the cumulative impact.
And maybe help a little bit. I'm going to suggest we make a motion before we're done that says they maintain a bus that runs from Juan Cabrillo to Point Dume, okay, at least for a year. Because I think you're going to run into two situations. One that says some of the parents in the beginning looking at Point Dume are going to say, this is a mess, but I don't have to drive it, I don't want to. So even if they, okay, and it may give us a chance in the beginning, if that bus runs and it works, it may give us a chance to do two things: relieve some of the traffic at the school, reduce some of the mileage that you're looking at, and see if it works, right?
And I'd also like to have Julian Capita from PlaceWorks to the CEQA consultant address more specifically your issue on the VMT.
Yeah, just with regards to VMT, you're absolutely correct. Starting this year, we do have to look at VMT as soon as jurisdictions adopt it. So that's a separate issue. We are going to start looking at that. But also, Commissioner Marks, our air quality modeling using CaliMod, which is a standard air quality model, it needs to calculate VMT for the project in order to determine the greenhouse gas emissions. And we use default because we didn't do a VMT study, we didn't need to. The CaliMod determines VMT based on land use and trip generation. So 185 trips, I think, is what we used on this model, and then the land use. And it just assumes how far the trips are going to be on a default. On that default, it predicted, based on your question, we looked at this, 385,000 VMT annually. Yeah. So your 12,000, it's right within that range. Yeah, I think we'd actually be a little bit lower.
Yeah, 10,000 less.
So as far as a greenhouse gas emissions impact or just increased vehicles on the road and VMT, our modeling, just using the defaults, came right up to what your calculations are. So I hope that'll leave some of your concerns at least.
Okay. And maybe come up with some things we can do to start offset some of that.
Can I go back to, we were talking about the phase 1, phase 2 distinction and needing different CDPs. I just wanted to look at what CEQA says about that. And let me first preface that by saying, as a general matter, in the abstract, I think the idea in the long run is great. I'm going to be sounding critical about things as we go along, but I just want to make that statement just so you have some sort of frame. But CEQA says, this is right up near the top at 150.04, that EIRs and negative decks should be prepared late enough in the planning process to provide meaningful information for environmental assessment. Now, on stage 2 here, we're not late in the planning process. We don't even know if it's a 1-story or a 2-story building or where on the site it is, et cetera. It also says, public agencies shall not undertake actions concerning the proposed public project that would limit the choice of alternatives or mitigation measures before completion of CEQA compliance. For example, agencies shall not take any action which gives impetus to a planned or foreseeable project in a manner that forecloses alternatives or mitigation measures that would ordinarily be part of CEQA review of that public project. I read that to mean that if you just go ahead with phase 1 without knowing what phase 2 is, that all those cumulative impacts that would occur as a result of both are going to be, we're not going to see those ever because the baseline is going to move till after phase one. So that concerns me. I mean, I'd like to see it happen, but I feel like we're sort of putting the cart before the horse here.
Well, I'm gonna leave it up to Bonnie and the city to sort of make sure that when we go down the line, that we get a report back to us that reflects the environmental impacts of whatever the hell phase two is gonna look like. All right? And I think they can do that. And I think us trying to figure out phase two right now, we haven't got phase one figured out, is.
Yeah, Phase 2 is not before you
Yeah,
tonight.
we're putting the horse,
That's part of my concern, is that phase one here has been presented as a dependent sub-portion of a greater project that is phase two. That this is just a transitionary thing to get us to what you want. And, for example, one question I have, and I guess this is a good place to put it, is when you look at the square foot of classroom space per student and what is desired and required, right now you've got 167 square feet per student in the existing campus. If you were to hypothetically put all the new Cabrillo students just in the portables, which you wouldn't do, but hypothetically, they would have 50-something square feet per student crammed in there. So you wouldn't do that. So you distribute the students between the new building and the portables, and you still get an average that's somewhere around 110 square feet per student as compared to the current 167 and as compared to your ideal, which is probably somewhere over 200. So I don't know what the portables achieve for you there. If you have a school in the first place that was designed for 600 students, why can't you put the students in that for a year or two or however long it takes to just build phase two? Why are we even having phase one when it's going to cramp the students more than they would be if you just put them in the existing building for a year or two?
Okay, let me answer the question about
That's a lot.
the traffic, the first part of the question about phase two. The traffic that's analyzed and evaluated here for phase one doesn't change for phase two. Phase two is merely replacing the portable buildings with a permanent building. It's not bringing more students in. It's not changing the parking lot. It's not changing anything else about the campus other than putting in a permanent building.
Let me just say.
Okay, let me just hang on one second. Okay. If you go through your mitigated deck and the responses that we got, okay, the responses for people who send comments in, I believe it says that in 1998, the joint enrollment in Point Dume and Juan Cabrillo was 750 students, okay? Right now, in this thing, you're saying it's down to 380. And I understand it may be down to 325 as opposed to 380. And then your letter says that student enrollment is going to continue to drop until 2030, all right? Now, the research I've done says that could continue on to 2040. Don't know, all right? But you guys never complete the story because you never tell me in none of your documents, you never say where it's going to stop, nor do you tell us when it's going to start ramping back up. So sitting here today, I have no idea. And the concept that says if we build it, we're going to bring the kids back from the other schools, by the time we get it built, the kids are going to have graduated, right? I mean, there's no coming back. They're gone. So we don't know what it's going to look like. You don't know what it's going to look like, but we want to make sure that when we get there, we've got good information so we can make good decisions.
As for what constitutes this sort of piecemealing we're talking about, traffic is maybe not the best example, as you're pointing out, but maybe cumulative grading might be, because we don't know what the second building is yet, how much grading it would require. If we do phase one and it's grading, then we get to phase two, and we don't count the phase one grading anymore because that's ancient history by that point. Similarly, with biological impacts, we have, I think, 10 western sycamores within the biological significant area, and the new building goes somewhere in that area, but we're not sure where yet. We have a box that shows a two-story building, but I hear what we really want is a one-story building that would spread out more. So we don't know how many western sycamores are going to be cut in the long run. So there are cumulative things that we're not seeing yet, and I'd be happy to say, sure, there are things down the road we don't know yet, but we're making decisions about the first part of that accumulation that we won't be able to include later down the line.
And I'd ask the question, and first off, I also want to say, I totally echo the sentiment that I want to see this happen, it's just I want to understand it. The question I'd ask is a little more broad. What should we maybe, or should we, so what would be cumulative effects that we might consider here? I mean, because I think you're hearing a pretty consistent, concern that phase 2 isn't well defined. What should we lock in on that we would ask for conditions or something that would be?
I think, and Trevor or Bonnie, you got to give me, I mean, we can get wrapped up in phase 2 and spend the rest of the evening going through there and end up with nothing. I think we've got to come back and focus on the impacts in phase 1, okay? And then we got to get some confidence that as we go to phase 2, that, the city is going to make sure that we get the information to effectively analyze whatever the environmental impacts are. And if they won't give us that stuff, we're going to see phase 2 is going to be a long way off.
Yeah.
Let me address a couple of the points, if I may. Your comment about we don't know exactly how many students are going to be attending the schools is valid. We make projections and we use the information that we have, and we won't be able to accurately predict it. But one thing is for sure is that by virtue of your permitting process, you control the maximum amount. That can go to the school. Right now, you've got a permitted proposed amount of 450 students, and if we were wanting to go over that, we would be back before you. If on phase 2, we will be back before you to address your concerns, and you won't have to speculate and guess because you will have the final design in front of you. You will be able to make these decisions. We're not able to complete phase 2 without your blessing and approval. So all of that will be taken care of in good time. The reason why we need to move on phase 1 is because we are dealing with a situation where we need to move the students out of the Malibu High School to deal with the public concern over the PCBs, and we want to make sure, even though it's completely acceptable by the science and from the regulatory agencies, we're trying to be mindful of the community's desires to not have kids in any of the classrooms that have any degree of PCBs. We want to make Malibu High School a clean slate in the future so that we don't have any of these lingering issues.
Let's go back to traffic, guys.
This is our first step.
Can we answer a question I asked already, which was simply in terms of the need for phase 1, given that it's temporary, and so we have this concern about square footage per student, that's something we're going to be compromising on one way or the other. How is it that the building designed for 600 isn't adequate to just move them into that now and then build the new thing when you need it?
Well, our 21st modern learning theory is that we need to have classroom spaces at 1,200 square feet. And you're right, the portables are not. But remember, the purpose of the phase 1 is to get the students off the campus so that the middle school students from Malibu High School can move over into Juan Cabrillo to free up and get the students out of the classrooms that have the various degrees of PCBs that are in there. And that the portables, unfortunately, the portables are set at 960 because that is the state standard. So that's what we have to order and get. That's what's DSA approved. If we tried to choose a different size, that would require a bunch of different plans, spend a lot longer to do. This phase 1 is a temporary project. We have to come back to you for phase 2 to realize the goal of the project, which is to develop this 21st century modern learning environment. That's your guarantee. Other part of that guarantee is the board has already approved that we are committed to this 21st century learning environment, and we are moving forward to make that. And as a matter of fact, there's an RFP on the street right now to get the architect set for the second phase.
Let's get back to traffic because we're sort of wandering down. Let's not do. If you got real quickie, but I want to keep it on traffic. We got to get that solved. That's the big issue here.
I have probably
John,
10 questions on phase
traffic.
2, and I'll do them later. Renika, do you have can you put up the overview of the parking lot or whatever you have? Can I have that pointer? One of the statements you made was you're not going to affect traffic on Fern Hill through traffic. And when I read the traffic report, I took it with a grain of salt, because the first thing it said was, well, we're going to add cars for another 190 students, but it's going to increase the queue by 2 cars. Well, that's nuts, okay? What do you do with the other 180 cars? So that's a question. So I looked at your parking lot, and this one doesn't show it, but you have a diagram that shows people queuing in here and people queuing off Fern Hill, okay? 2 lanes coming in. And we don't have it here, but, and that of course goes down to 1 lane coming out here. Okay, well that can't be. These 2 lanes have to merge. So therefore, Fern Hill is going to be stacked.
It's blocked.
There's no question about it, unless you can have a traffic person tell me where those cars are going to go.
Yeah,
we cannot allow Fern Hill to be stacked, period. It's a public street that needs, that's the main street across Point Doom.
And I want to refine John's question a bit, just to kind of call out something that could help us here. Actually in the staff report, there's 3 summaries of arrival rates of 195, then 380, then 450, and the number of servers, 4, et cetera. If someone could kind of describe to us what that means on here and what we're seeing in practice right now, because if I'm understanding this document right, we already have 195 students there with a 4 service rate. What's the reality on the ground, so we can see how how much this matches the reality that's happening currently?
Yeah, and my real question is, and do you have a traffic person?
Yeah, I'm bringing them up right now.
I've seen a diagram that shows cars turning from Fern Hill into this parking lot. Not from the stacking lane on the right, the no parking lane. 2 lanes turning in.
Right.
Now, why does it, since Fern Hill's a 1-lane road, how am I going to drive from Gray Fox to Cliffside without being blocked?
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. Brian Marchetti with KOA. We conducted the traffic and circulation analysis. And I was out there in 4 different peak periods to get an understanding of what happens at the school. Days we were out there, there was no queuing at all. Everyone came into the school, it was fine. It was when that first parking area north of the driveway, which is supposed to hold the queue, people were unloading and unloading students in their area, and that ended up blocking the inbound queue, and people went around, and that's when we saw that 5-minute blockage. So it doesn't happen every day, but if that operates properly, the queue is
That's without doubling the traffic.
I'm sorry?
That is before you doubled the traffic, correct? You were out there watching.
Yeah, that's currently, I was just giving a little background on what's happening now. And we do have numbers in our supplemental, we did some supplemental analysis to respond to city comments. And the queue does increase from about 275 up to 400. So we looked at how that fits within the site and where that would land within the curb area on Fern Hill.
So you're going to add 125 cars.
That's
And as I read the staff report, it said you may back up 2 or 3 more cars out of 125. How does that math work? Where do those other 123 go?
Well, they're not all there. They're not all there at once. So
well, I calculated out if you unload a car every 20 seconds, it takes over an hour.
They can do 4 at a time. That's the
you still have to get out and get the car out.
Yeah, there's multiple points on the school site where students can be loaded, unloaded. So it's not just one car in the front. It's a couple cars can unload and unload at the same time.
That's right here.
And then they move on. Correct, on site.
Okay, but those cars come around this corner. The 2 lanes join into one, and they come out here. Mm-hmm. So every 20 seconds, a car comes out of here. That takes well over an hour to unload the cars. Okay. And they're telling me it's 15, 20 minutes to do 200 and something cars. You just divide by 3 and see what you got.
But with doubling it, it doesn't take a half an hour right now to do pickup and drop off. You arrive 15 minutes before the bell. It's quiet. I can hear birds out there, and then the big deluge comes with all the vehicles, And then the pickup drop-off peak period is about 15 minutes, and then it's back to normal again.
Yeah,
So
so you're doing
with
hundred and
future-
75 cars in 15 minutes. So how long does it take to do 225?
Well, they're changing the configuration too, though, so maybe,
No, they're not changing the configuration. They have one exit.
but the one exit is not, the cars aren't turning back around to the same
How do you
entry
know?
point. In the diagram, in the planned turning templates.
Yeah. Yes, they are.
It's a different design after the fact.
Just a point of clarification, the 275 and 400, we were talking about, that's number of feet in the queue. That's how we do a queuing analysis, to look at how long the queue
Okay,
is.
you have 225 cars, and they're average about 16 feet apiece.
Number in feet, 275 feet and 400 feet.
Okay, so how do you get 225 cars in 225 feet? You got 1 foot cars?
Well, those numbers don't correlate the same. It's not one car is 25 feet. The cars come at different times, so the queue gets processed as we move forward. So we calibrated our queuing analysis to what we saw on the ground now for that worst case day, and saw that there was 1 or 2 cars that queued onto the street and caused the blockage. And we calibrated that with existing volumes. It looked good. We added the future volumes, and we saw what it would be. There's multiple parking areas along the street. The first is north of the driveway is an area where cars can queue. It's a no parking area during school time. They can queue there and get out of traffic if they use it properly. The next area is an on-street parking area, so we looked to see if that would start blocking the on-street permitted parking area. There's about 8 vehicles can park there. And then we looked to see if that would affect the bus stop that's north of there. In the future, with the 450 students, it would start impacting the on-street parking area, and that's when we talked about mitigation measures for that.
Let me ask you a simple question. I saw a diagram that had people turning into here, 2 lanes turning in, one from Fern Hill itself and one from the no parking area where they were queuing. So 2 cars were turning in at the same time and making 2 lanes. Is that the plan?
The second turning lane is to go into the parking lot, so those cars are not in the queue. They go right into parking spots, and that queue never developed. Those vehicles are able to go into the parking lot directly. That
Will
second
you
lane.
admit, though, that cars lined up on regular Fern Hill will stop at any given point?
Stop where?
In the road. Can I drive from here to there and not stop if I'm a regular person? I'm not going to school.
Yeah, that's part of the design. The driveway's being widened so that those 2 vehicle queues can move in.
Okay, now let me ask you this.
And
The driveway's
there's,
wide.
there is room along the curb lane, Commissioner, for that to work.
The driveway's widened to 2 entrances.
Right.
Those 2 cars come along here. These 2 cars are parallel. They turn into 1 car. This is 1 lane. Okay? Does not that slow down the cars when they have to get 2 in the same spot?
Those are different vehicle flows, and the parking lot flow does not operate in the same manner. They're not going straight to block the other queue. They will operate independently, and that's not going to be an issue.
Okay. John, Commissioners, let me suggest something. We are not going to solve the traffic issue in this meeting.
No, but I'm going to ask.
I understand. What we want to do, okay, look, I think there is an interest in getting the school merger done. I think we got a bunch of things that are still moving. The number of students is moving. We don't know if it's going to be 380, if it's going to be 325, or by the time we get done, there's going to be 200. We don't know, okay? So my suggestion is this. I think we take a look at the traffic issue. We condition the bus, all right, to enable us to, if people are coming in. I think we take a look at this 2-turn lane and we say, no, you can't do that because you're going to be locking up Fern Hill, right? So they got to figure out a way around that. I think they got to get a sheriff there when the place opens. You want some law enforcement sitting in that place because whoever talked about people blowing down Gray Fox are absolutely correct, all right? So you want to have, they're going to put parking, what do you call those things, to measure the speed limit, okay? Have those in place, but you want to, it's whoever said you can't train people, you can train them if there's a sheriff or somebody sitting there and they see a sheriff, that will slow them down. And it may take you a month of having that sheriff sit there, but if people expect that sheriff's gonna be there, they will begin to slow down, and I think that's what we gotta do to start trying to protect some of these kids.
I agree with you, but I also think that the school district is asking for this M&D, and they're saying what's gonna happen.
Okay?
If people stop on Fernhill in the driver's lane, I want to put a condition in, they are violating their CUP.
Okay, let me finish what I'm going to suggest. The last thing I'm going to suggest is, I don't know what the traffic impact is going to be. I'm going to suggest that the school district come back to us on a quarterly basis, and I'll ask them tell us what's going on with traffic, right? I mean, what have they observed? What are they doing to try and fix it? And we on a quarterly basis, we get that report, and I think it will do two things. I think it'll assure the residents that somebody is focused on this thing, right? That we're looking at it, we want to make sure you guys are being the good neighbors that you want to be. And it may take us 2 or 3 iterations of this thing to get it done right, but if we stay on top of it and keep it focused, we got a better chance than if we just don't review this thing again for another year. So, bottom line of my story, I want to do the bus. I want to eliminate the 2-hand turn lanes. I want to have a quarterly report coming back to us that says, here's what's going on with traffic, here's what you guys have done, here's what we're doing to fix it, and I want a sheriff there.
I'd like to speak on traffic, and then I think we could do some straw votes on each of these things as we go along.
Let's do that.
So maybe can I add something to what you just said right now?
Yes.
Look, I want to reiterate something Craig Foster said, that we want to be good neighbors. We're not here trying to cram something down the throats that no one wants. So I have a principal here that gets parents together, that they navigate traffic, they get volunteers, they do all kinds of stuff. It's way worse in Santa Monica, because I have schools that are 700 students, and the parents are making it happen because they're volunteering, there's police out there. We're doing what we have to do to make sure that we are good neighbors with the community.
There's no doubt in my mind that in the first day of this thing, it's going to be a mess, okay?
Yeah.
Let's not, okay? And it's going to, a little background. I used to live in Boston when the New England Patriots opened up their stadium in Foxborough. I went to the first game. At halftime, half of the people couldn't even get into the stadium because traffic was backed up, all right? They fixed it. Now, whether, I've been there a while, so but it's going to take some study. It's going to take some people putting some time and effort into it. And I think this quarterly reporting I'm looking for will make sure that you guys are looking at it, make sure the residents have got some voice in what's going on, and over time, we'll make it work. That's
good evening, Chair.
Yes.
Adam Chase with Public Works. This may help alleviate some of your concerns. During the review process, the comment from Public Works, I'm just going to read it specifically. We pretty much made a condition within 6 months of commencement of the project, the Facility Improvements Projects Department of the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District shall provide a monitoring report prepared by a licensed traffic engineer, which includes site observations, queuing analysis, site circulation inefficiencies, safety concerns, and other information to be determined.
Good. The difference is I want it to come back to the Planning Commission, and I want it quarterly, because I don't want to, look, if the first report comes back and says it isn't working, we'll know that, right? And if we got to re-energize our efforts to get it fixed, we'll have some impetus to do that. I don't want to wait 6 months. Look, we understand. We deal with NOBU, right? We understand what traffic can do to you if we don't get it fixed up early. So let's get it fixed early.
One of the options, Commissioner Euring, might be Adam is reading from condition 42, if you wanted to modify that condition to be on a quarterly basis
and report back to the Planning Commission.
And report back.
Okay, but let's go, I want to do a straw vote, make sure everybody.
I want to find out a couple more things.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, one of our biggest problems in Malibu is we regularly approve parking lots for businesses that are smaller than the businesses. We have a general rule, you got to park your employees on site. You're telling us that you've got 59 parking spaces and 80 staff can be there. How are you going to handle 80 staff with 59 spaces?
Actually, as I mentioned in the presentation, although there's 80 staff, they're not all going to be on site at the same time. The part-timers it's in flux there. The chances of them Actually, it'll probably never be an 80 there. That's just the total number of staff there are, but what's present on the site is lower than that because
Would it be 59?
Well, there's 36 full-time, so it'll be some number higher than that. So yeah, around 50
And
is
then I
a
noticed
good-
you also, I go there quite often, you have sites that are reserved for certain families and people like that. Are those going to be open parking spaces, or are they going to be reserved?
Get rid of that program.
I have a great principal that's going to be working with the parents to make sure if we're going to change cultural nuances there, that we involve the parents in it. So if there's a need to make sure it's open, I'm sure we'll get there. But I'm not going to go make a statement right now about that because I got to get these communities together first. So.
Okay. Now, I got a question to staff. We did a huge study on speeding on Point Doom, and we concluded that everybody was speeding, essentially. But then we concluded that some people didn't like speed bumps. So we didn't put any on Fern Hill. We didn't put any on Gray Fox. And now, from past experience, we know they're going to be speeding. Now, this is not their problem because it's a city street. Is the city going to do anything for traffic remediation, other than they're putting up a sign saying you're going 55 and a 25?
Traffic, we would have to follow the procedures for a traffic study and engineering report that would investigate potential solutions. Some of those solutions may be at the always stop at Fern Hill and Gray Fox. Could be curb extensions to provide additional traffic calming kind of friction that may occur. But these are things that with our partners, the school district, that we're gonna have to work together to be able to come with creative solutions, not just what you said, just signage.
What the city's gonna do is Bonnie's gonna help contact the sheriff's department with C2 and see if she can get us some officers up there when this thing opens. So we set the right tone from the beginning, all right?
But what you're telling us is you got to go through the whole rigmarole, which took 7 years last time. So
We have to
we'll
go
be
through
on
the
to phase
engineering
2 by then.
process to basically have engineering backing to.
Well, I mean, as you know from the experience with dealing with a number of things involving traffic and right-of-way on Point Doom, it became a complicated project with a lot of different opinions, and so there would necessarily have to be some community involvement in solving the problem. But yes, it's apparent that there's a speeding problem, and we can certainly work with the sheriff's department to get more enforcement there.
Commissioner Hill.
I just want to add, when we require the bus,
Yes.
I would like to have, when they come back with a bus report, a count of how many people actually rode it.
Oh, no, yeah, I want the bus running for a year. Let's see what happens.
But more than running, know what had happened.
Well, that can be part of our traffic study that we get at the end of the year. Commissioner Hill, you're up.
Okay, couple questions on traffic. Just to clarify, on that queuing that happens on Fern Hill, what happens if, and does it ever reach the intersection at Gray Fox? And if so, does it Gray Fox, or does it queue across on the north side? Where would that go? Would that interact with the intersection at Gray Fox?
No, that would never happen, under normal operating conditions.
Okay.
If there's some sort of vehicle stall or something like that, it could
Okay.
potentially back up, but.
I missed the number of parking spaces. Has that been changed
59.
or affected by the new scheme?
No.
Same number, okay. I've heard and read about I forget what it's called, provisional or alternate secondary pickup drop-off on the Gray Fox side. Based on what we've heard from the audience and what we're hearing up here, I would strongly suggest that be nixed straight up and that access be used as little as possible, because we don't want children getting in and out of cars on Gray Fox, period.
And it sounds like no queuing on any road, because you
That would
pointed
be
out.
a condition I would put, is to do whatever you can to not have any queuing happening on Gray Fox.
Yeah, or on any of the streets, you pointed out when queuing happened for a drop-off, that's when things backed up. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that was isolated to Fern Hill in close proximity to the driveway.
Can we do a quick straw vote?
Yeah.
So does anybody agrees
Just
with anything?
in
Go ahead, sorry.
In the process, can we just use items, looks like 35 through 42, line up with what we're talking about in terms of what's already in the resolution? So we could use.
if everybody sort of agrees on what we want to do, then we can figure out how to get it into the resolution.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just make our lives easy. Okay. A full year bus running from Juan Cabrillo to Point Doom, or if you decide when you're doing it that people actually want to drive to the Point Doom shopping center and drop off kids there and pick, whatever. But we want a bus running for a full year to see if we can use that to help reduce some of the traffic on Point Doom. What do you think?
One comment. That sounds fine, but one of the speakers mentioned Zumarez and wildlife, the entrance to Point Doom. That is private property. It's not city property, and you can't park there. Just so you understand that. People park there all the time, but it's private property.
Okay. Can I get a straw vote?
Yes.
Chair Euring, would you put some kind of point for when the bus would be eliminated? You're saying for 1 year?
Yeah, I want a year. They run it for a year. At the end of the year, they come back and tell us that it's working. If it's working, we can continue it.
No, we can't keep changing the conditions in the permit, whatever conditions
If it's
you put in here.
working and they're good neighbors, they'll keep it running.
Well, Trevor, are you saying we can't require, we could require a bus for 10 years?
Yeah, you could require it for a 10-year period. You can require it, you could put it for in perpetuity unless the ridership falls between a certain amount, or you could say it continues as long as a certain ridership exists. You could do something along those lines.
Yeah, and on a quarterly review.
Steve, give us some guidance here. What works for you guys?
Sure. So our standard when we run buses, I'm sorry, I'm Steve Massetti, I'm the bond program manager. Our standard when we run buses is that if we have ridership of 10 riders or more, we go ahead and run the bus. The district subsidizes that very heavily. We lose a significant amount of money when that happens, but that's been the standard that we've implemented so far, has been 10 plus.
Okay.
Well, Trevor, can we put it, we can't say it's required for 10 years, but on yearly review, we can drop the requirement? Do it the other way around?
In line with standard practice for the school district? So kind of defer to their rules?
No, we got our rules,
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think you want to put a standard
Bonnie,
in.
say what you just said. That was a good idea.
I was gonna suggest that if ridership dropped below, do you have a threshold, like it drops below 10 over a certain period, like a month or 6 months or?
Go ahead, Carrie.
Well,
something that.
Bonnie, I'd like to make a.
Carrie Upton, Chief Operations Officer. We do it based on bus passes. So at the beginning of August, we would put it out with the bus passes, and there'd be routes that would be developed there. If there are more than 10 bus passes sold, we run that bus for the entire year. If there are less than 10 bus passes sold, we generally cancel the bus. What I would say is we run it up to the first 3 months, no matter how many bus passes are sold, because some people might learn, hey, it's better to ride the bus, and then we could adjust that. But after 3 months, if we don't have 10 bus passes sold, in some ways we're creating worse traffic by having the bus run with 2 kids than we would be having the bus run without.
What do you think, Commissioner?
I totally disagree. The reason we're asking for the bus is to get people out of the traffic. So if they come back and say, gee, we ran the bus and nobody took it, that means they didn't get anybody on the bus. It didn't help traffic at all. It hurt it. Not the other way around. It's to their advantage to not have people ride the bus.
Well, there are limits to what they can do to make people ride the bus too.
Yeah, and there are incentives to ride the bus. Okay, but our purpose here is to reduce the number of cars on Point Doom. So if we say, we'll give you an incentive, if you only sell 9 tickets, we'll let you slide. It's the opposite of what we want to do, as far as I'm concerned.
You're saying you want to require the bus for the year to get it sorted out, to let that kind of find its natural place, and then look at ridership.
Right.
So you kind of like a break-in period or a training period.
You could phrase it as the bus is required for a 1-year period. This is from Juan Cabrillo to the school, and then for the following year, it would continue unless ridership falls below 10 bus passes sold for a 3-month period. Is that?
Works for me. What do you guys think?
Well, if you're requiring it, then you're talking about 180 some students, or at least near that, and so it's not going to fall below 10 if you're required to take the bus from there.
So we would have a significant problem requiring students who are being relocated from Cabrillo to Point Doom to force them to ride the bus.
And we cannot do that.
I like Trevor's idea. I think that gives us what we want. It gives us in the first year the bus running. After that, it gives the school district a chance to either cut it off or keep it running based upon what kind of ridership you're getting. So I think it works for both parties.
Okay.
Jeff? Craig?
Yes.
John?
Let me ask you a question. I know we gotta protect Point Doom. This is a big deal.
We are trying to protect Point Doom.
What happens after the year when we review this and Point Doom's a total mess? Do we have anything? Can we do anything?
You can't add new conditions. You can get a report and you can add pressure. You could request code enforcement to look into things. Right. This is the same situation you're in with your reports about Nobu and so, not Nobu, but Soho.
So the only thing, as far as I'm concerned, we could do is require the bus and reward them if traffic gets better. Rather than saying it goes away, even if it is terrible.
But if no one's riding it, it's just gonna make things worse.
It gives them incentive to get
Look, when they come back and talk to us, I think it gives us the opportunity to say, look, if incentives work, we can suggest them. You guys can consider that in your program, right? I mean, it's a year out. Let's see what the hell happens.
I just want to point out that that's how we got to where we are.
I
Nobu.
I
Well,
understand.
We boxed ourselves in a corner.
Here's the other thing that is different than Nobu, is that the district has already suggested a series of measures that you haven't talked about in much detail yet, that they can turn to try to further alleviate the issues.
Well, yeah, just like Nobu though.
Okay.
If they don't care at that point, then they won't turn to them.
Well, as long as they haven't documented, we can run pressure. If
Right,
they
they're
aren't
gonna come in
documented,
front of
yeah.
us, John.
There's no pressure. Trevor just told us we can't do anything.
Oh, you were in the middle of taking a straw vote.
Yes. I got 2 yeses down that side.
I'll throw a yes in there.
John?
Okay.
All right, so we got that one done.
Can I
No, I want to add something, if you would go along with it. No queuing on Fernhill, on the road itself.
Well, this was just the start on the buses. We're still continuing.
We're
on
just doing buses.
Can I repeat the bus, just to make sure we have the language?
Okay, so
It's gonna require a bus from Juan Cabrillo to the school for 1 year, and then it continues in the second year and following years unless ridership falls below 10 bus passes sold for a 3-month period during the school year.
okay. Jeff?
I would suggest that you not limit it necessarily, the starting point to be Juan Cabrillo. It could be that the district may find that there's a better and more convenient or more effective starting point than Juan Cabrillo.
You want to say from Juan Cabrillo or another location approved by the planning director?
I think that actually makes sense, given
Off of Point Doom?
the traffic problems on Morning View. It probably makes sense to coordinate this with Public Works.
So let's do that. With Bonnie, if they come back with another good location, Bonnie can approve it for them.
As long as it's not on Point Doom?
Right, I mean, it wouldn't make sense to have it right
Okay,
around
can
the
we add
corner.
that language?
Yes, so it would be from Juan Cabrillo or another location
Off of Point Doom.
not in Point Doom, approved by the planning director.
Carrie, go ahead.
Hi. Speaking to our transportation director, what we are offering is that based on bus passes, because you really can't ride the bus, we have to know who's riding the bus. We'll set up a route and we'll pick up the children near their homes. And there will also be a stop at Cabrillo, but there will be stops along the way to bring the children in. And that's the way we're setting up, but when we sell bus passes, that's when we set up the route, because we set it up based on where they are.
This would just require
That's why-
you to make the stop. You could have the ability to.
That's why talking to you guys is a good thing, because you do this for a living, we don't. Cool. All right, so looks like we got a bus and we know what we're gonna do with it. Step one, okay?
I wanted to struggle on a condition of no alternate pickup zone on Gray Fox. Sorry.
Unloading zone.
I think everybody heard me. Not on TV. Remove the alternate pickup and drop off on Gray Fox.
Where's that located?
What do you guys think?
Well, I know Gray Fox, and I know Steve's right. I mean, people go down that hill, people flip golf carts on that hill. It's
People do come down that hill, but that's drop-off spot has been used regularly for all the time that I've been associated with the school. There's a gate right there. People can come out. Their cars are parked on the street, and they can get into the cars. You've got a different problem when you're talking about pickup after school than you do have when you're talking about drop-off in the morning. Drop-off in the morning all happens at once. Pickup, it's like waiting for your Uber at outside the Coliseum. You got to wait for that particular car, and so there needs to be a variety of places where kids and parents can get together. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a great idea, but I don't think it's wise to try to prohibit it and allow the flexibility of in general, these people are not in the business of getting kids killed, and so I think we can allow some flexibility in terms of designing the program.
So there has not been any historical issue of kids running around on Gray Fox waiting for their cars? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would suggest no drop-off, you can't pick up. As Jeff says, the pickup is where they gotta go get them, rather than wait for 'em.
Trevor, if they come back with their quarterly report, okay? Is there any way that if somebody comes back and there's an analysis that says dropping off kids at Gray Fox is a huge problem, that we can prevent that from happening? How do we do that?
You have a couple of things. I mean, you have the ability to bring a public hearing here. You have your report, so you can bring this issue to light. You can put pressure on them. If it rises to the level of a nuisance, then there would be potentially some ability to modify. But that's a pretty significant level to reach in order to force it upon them.
Here's what I'm trying, and John, I'm not trying to argue, but here's what I'm trying to do. I believe, okay, that they've got as much interest as we do in making this thing work, all right? And if we squeeze them too tight, I want them to think. I want them to take a look at the traffic, what's going on, and have the flexibility to sit down and say, I want to move this, or I don't want to move this, and they're going to come back and tell us what they're doing, and we'll get a sense of that.
All I want to point out is what Stephanie Rocco said. You know, when the school opened the last time with less students, they had a huge problem with people parking other people's parking lots and in front of their driveways, and hanging U's on that street.
And I'll guarantee you, when this school opens with these kids, you're going to have the same problem. Those first couple weeks are going to be a mess.
This went on for a long time.
All right, but that's why we're going through this process. It says they got to come back and tell us, and we're going to try and get that solved. I don't know what the program that was going on when it opened the first time, but that's why we're doing this.
As long as we have police presence.
If we may, I'd like the Principal Webster to be able to talk to you about how they handled and are being good neighbors with dealing with pickup and drop-off and how it works.
I'm Patrick Miller, principal of Webster Elementary currently. We've had some of our own lessons learned as we've had to shift traffic procedures as well. To Mr. Jennings' point, I would not eliminate an alternate pickup area in the afternoon. We tried that this year when we implemented traffic procedures and some improved safety procedures. We tried to restrict it to one area and a supervised area and tried to contain them. However, like one of your public comments earlier, changing adult behaviors is hard, and our parents have a tendency to arrive at 2:30, even though our students will not be out in front of the school until 3:05, and that's where the queuing occurs. So if you don't have an alternate location, that's where you have queuing concerns. Our morning drop-off, we have 260 students currently. Last year we had 280. We have about 30 students take the bus. Got to keep in mind, you're not one student per one car. We have a number of families, but we still turn a number of cars at Webster in the morning. We have absolute almost zero queue. We open our gates 20 minutes before the school day starts. Cars, we open 5 or 6 doors at a time. Kids are in and out and cars are moving, never staying still for more than about 30 seconds. Between 8:35 and 8:40 is when you'll have the largest number of cars in a line, and it never gets above 10 or 15 in the morning, and they're in and out. So pickup is really where it keeps moving. It is the afternoon where an alternate pickup area is important to address your concerns of kids' safety, which is obviously a shared concern of ours. On that Gray Fox side where there is a gate, you could keep the kids on the inside and then release them to the cars. At Webster, we utilize placards with names. We've had volunteer school staff in the afternoon during those release times to help get kids into cars. It goes very smoothly. In the morning, we have between 2 and 3 parent volunteers. I myself am out there almost every single morning observing the process. And we get those kids in and out quickly. We have a number of written procedures: exit from the right, have your stuff with you in the car, refrain from cell phone use. That keeps the cars moving. I also want to specifically address your concern with the Sheriff's Department. The City of Malibu does have a partnership with the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station called STOP. It stands for Stop Teenage Traffic Offender Program. It's a partnership with the city of Malibu and the other cities. It was originated to address teenage traffic concerns, but then expanded to address any traffic concern around a school campus. Parents can report any dangerous driving. Any community member can report dangerous driving near any of our school campuses. There's an online reporting form, and Lost Hills will follow up with all of those parents.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Would you allow pickup on Civic Center Way? I mean, your school's a little bit different than this. One's a main street and yours a cul-de-sac.
Correct. We do not do pickup from Civic Center Way. We have our two driveways we do from Winter Canyon and off of Vista Pacific on the bottom end.
I'm just saying that Gray Fox is not Civic Center Way, but it's not your cul-de-sac either.
Okay. So we've got the bus figured out. Have we figured out the quarterly reporting back to us? Would you do a straw vote on that? Anybody disagree with that?
I agree.
So is that, would that be to alter condition 42 to say within 3 months? Be every 3 months?
Every 3 months. We want the school to come back with a report that says, here's what's going on with traffic, what they're doing to try and fix it.
And what their bus ridership is.
Yeah, well, okay.
Okay, so is it?
And that goes to the planning commission.
I think maybe this is a different condition, because the one that that's in here, Bonnie, it looks like requires a licensed traffic engineer to put all this together. Is this what you guys want every 3 months?
He on the 6 months, he wanted a traffic engineer.
That's how the existing condition number 42 is written. It was designed to have a report prepared by a traffic engineer and
what do you think,
submitted
Steve?
to Public Works and Planning.
I think you're looking for a separate report to the planning commission from the.
Well, I don't want him to do multiple reports.
I don't want to run up the bill either. I don't think we
No,
need a traffic engineer.
I think that's right. I think the 6 months for the traffic engineer, I think you're okay with that, but when we were talking about busing and you want to know if that's working or not, if it's being used.
So
that would be, I think,
on
what
a
you're talking
quarterly
about
basis.
on a quarterly basis, with one exception being the quarter that covers the summer. We're not going to have a lot to report.
I got it.
But beyond that, I think we were saying 3 times during the school year we would come back to you.
Cool.
To report on bus ridership and I guess at the same time we'd be reporting on traffic impacts. But for the traffic, the Public Works Department and traffic, I think we would expect to do the 6 month that they've asked for as a separate condition.
Okay with you?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Let me ask Bonnie.
Let me clarify it.
Okay, will the sheriff report too, or not?
Well, they're going to give us. I mean, we can
Well, I don't know how many tickets people got. If they're not giving any tickets,
check with the sheriff. They'll tell you. Okay.
Okay. What are the items that you want them to report back on? Traffic, bus use,
and what they're what they see the problems as, and what they're doing to try and fix them. That's what we want to know.
Without the rigor of the traffic engineer, more just.
That's being done once.
Every 6 months, right?
No, it's one time. It's within 6 months.
Oh, correct, I see.
Okay, so we got the bus, we've got the reporting back, we've got the no two turn lanes on Fernhill.
Oh, hold on.
Have you done that one?
I don't know.
We've only done one so far. The second one, I just want to clarify, would be every 3 months during the school year until terminated by the Planning Commission. The school district shall report on traffic, bus use, traffic problems, and potential solutions to the Planning Commission. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That work for you?
It does, except we wouldn't want to do that in perpetuity. So I would.
Yeah.
It says until terminated by the Planning Commission, so you could request that they could terminate
that
review.
that works. I just wasn't sure how that gets to an end. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we're not going to do the sum.
3 times a year.
Okay,
every
so
3 months during the school year.
The multiple turn lanes, John, you want to do that one?
Yeah, I just want one entrance into the parking lot and one exit with no queuing from the traffic lane on Fernhill.
May I comment on that real quick?
Yes.
Okay, so off of Fernhill coming into the parking lot, we effectively have 2 lanes, right? We have one which is the queue lane, where people line up to make their right turn into the on-site drop-off and pickup lane. That's being maintained, and then we're widening the entrance to provide further opening to allow the vehicle that wants to come in and park in the parking lot and not be in the queue lane to be able to use that secondary entrance to get in. And there'll be the parents there to prevent anyone from trying to take cuts in the queue lane. They'll be able to move them along, and you wouldn't have that queue on Fernwell because of either the staff member or the parent volunteer will be able to tell that person,
Yeah,
move
but
it along.
you told me earlier that the parking spots, the 48 parking spots, or 59.
59.
Were filled by faculty and staff before the people got there. Now.
No, I did not.
Oh, so
I'm
the
sorry, I didn't
staff
say
comes,
that.
the people who park there, the staff, comes after people queue to come in?
Well, there's staff come and go during the day. Again, remember, this isn't all 80 people that are hired by the district, that our employees show up in the morning. There's a certain amount that come in the beginning, and some come middle day, and some come.
So what is who is gonna stand out in the middle of the street and identify who's gonna park and who isn't?
Well, they're not standing out in the street, but they're definitely on curbside, so that's part of the valet process, and I'm sure
Yeah, but I'm saying,
Patrick
if
can
you're
tell
turning
you-
from Fernhill, from the driver's lane, and to the right of you is a queue.
John, one favor?
This was a condition that was imposed by the city. We asked them to do this. Can I get
I
the
don't care
opinion
whether
of the
we
traffic
ask them to-
engineers?
John, let's.
Yeah, because
Commissioner Marks.
does condition 37 read correctly to you, John, or do we change
Well,
that?
I don't know what condition 37 is.
So that's specifically saying the second lane will only be used to access the parking lot, not
Yeah.
for drop-off. It's already,
No, that concerns me dramatically.
so you,
Will cars stop on Fernhill? Can I drive from my house to Point Doom without having to wait while these people are lined up going into a parking lot?
It
that's got a bunch
does
of
say
people
vehicles
going
are not allowed to queue in the second lane.
so presumably, if they can't make that turn to park, part of their handbook would say if you can't,
If they can't do it, what do they do? Keep on driving?
they'd come around the block again, I presume.
Yeah, what block?
Oh, true.
So what are you suggesting, John?
I'm saying no queuing on Fernhill, on the street.
It says that.
It says that.
What is it, what does it say?
Look at condition 37, John.
I don't have it, so
Oh.
just
You
read
got
it
it,
to me.
you got it in your book.
37.
Suggestion, John, was that the two-lane entrance into the parking lot was to be eliminated and moved down into one lane. Was that not what you were asking?
Well, basically, that's what's happening. If you have two cars coming in.
No, is that what you were asking, to turn it from a two-lane entrance into a one-lane entrance?
Yeah,
Okay, that's what I thought.
well, essentially, because if you have a two-lane entrance, you've got queuing.
Read 37.
The condition would say that second lane is not allowed to be used for pickup and drop-off.
No, well, that means you're getting your kid out of your car in the driving lane.
No, not
Now, where's 37 there?
To me, the only issue here would be
I
if
think
so many
37
people
does
were
what you want.
wanting to park in the parking lot at the same time.
Right.
And it doesn't seem like that's gonna be a very frequent occurrence.
No.
So Commissioner Hill, you would be happy leaving it the way it is?
On this particular point, yes.
Commissioner Jennings? Commissioner Marks?
Yep.
Well, do we have any review? What happens if they do it?
We got our staff review, we had the quarterly review.
Can we pull a CUP if they do it? It's a condition.
You can do the stuff, Trevor, we do nuisance, we can do a whole bunch of things if it starts.
No, not nuisance. Nuisance has never happened in Malibu
Well,
for 28
okay.
years. Okay, I know that story. It's never happened. So,
if you
Trevor, can I pull their CUP if they queue in the driver's lane?
Well, I think the standard is that they would have a hearing. You have to have due process for, turning in the CUP, and it would have to be repeated. Like, happens one time, they wouldn't lose their CUP, but if you demonstrate they're repeatedly violating the condition, then you could put it up for a hearing.
Okay, is that all right with you?
I don't believe it'll happen, but I'll go along with it.
Okay. All right, so then we get that one solved. So anything else on traffic? I mean, we've hammered this on.
Talked about the condition on the sheriff, is that written?
No, we don't need we need a condition on the sheriff?
We can't. We don't control the sheriff.
Yeah, Bonnie, if you would talk to whoever you gotta talk to, if you guys would talk to the sheriff, I mean, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't wanna help prevent people from getting run over at the school.
I think
So-
when high school began, the sheriffs were very enthusiastic about working with the school district and coming out, and particularly the first week or so of school, they had a lot of police presence there, in the early days anyway. And I'm sure that'll work itself out.
I know when they opened Point Doom before, I talked to a sheriff, and he was specifically told me that the city asked him not to give any tickets.
Okay, all right,
The last
we
thing
get traffic, go ahead.
Last thing I would ask, just a question of the team. It's something that kind of came from conversation, I think, with Craig, if I remember. Just with the bringing in the new students, do we need to have anything to accommodate any different scheduling in the morning, starting things earlier for any reason?
That is we have that already as a conditional mitigation measure,
doesn't work, right.
should it be needed.
Okay, but not so much for mitigation, but more for requirements of the different demographics coming into the location? Is there any potential impacts? Craig, do you remember when we talked about that?
So
Do you want to touch that?
Right. So I think this will be the first time some of our team have heard this. The issue is that a lot of, there's a differing demographic of students at Cabrillo versus Point Doom. We've kind of made an assumption, and from Commissioner Mark's conversation today, it probably means that more of the parents of Cabrillo students need to get to work, and therefore we may need to consider whether the start time should remain what it is. Is that fair, Commissioner Marks?
That's fair, thank you.
Fair enough, or that we provide before and after.
Okay.
Right, I think Carrie can address before and after school care.
And the main reason I call that out is condition 36 is about traffic, which states hours of operation. I just didn't know if you want to adjust that for that consideration.
Okay. So right now at Point Doom, we do have wraparound care, which means beginning at 6:30 in the morning and going until 6 o'clock at night, we have care that's provided by both CDS, Child Development Services, and also provided by the Boys and Girls Club. They have after-school care. We've already talked to the Boys and Girls Club. We're going to move the Child Development Services out of that area, but Boys and Girls Club will pick up the wraparound care, so they will have people there to pick up to care for students in the morning prior to school, and we'll also be there in the afternoon with after-school activities.
So then for what's written in condition 36, do we need to adjust that? Because it only states drop-off, pickup 7:30. If you've got, is that another use, or I just want to make sure we don't miss something here. Does my question make sense?
This is only requiring them to direct
the extra
traffic.
staff,
Yeah,
okay.
so it's not limiting the hours separately
Got it. Is there
located.
anything-
I don't think there are hours limiting the school. Like, it's just run by, assume that the school district has policies about when the school can be open and
Okay,
closed.
so then that doesn't restrict them to not be able to deliver, or to have drop-offs before that, they just don't have.
It's
the
saying they
extra
shall have it during these periods of time. If they want to provide additional staff to direct, I don't think that would be run afoul of any other
Yeah, I
conditions.
think we hammered traffic. Everybody agree? Okay.
What was,
Let me,
wait, what was that? Did
I
you
just
have-
said, no, I said we've hammered traffic.
Oh, okay, I
enough.
thought you had another
I think
condition. You just went
we
too
have
fast.
solved that. Let me come up with an easy one that I think everybody can agree with. The there's optimist. You're not gonna have 450 kids or 480 kids, whatever the number is, in that school in the very near future, at least based upon all the projections we've seen. And I think the latest numbers I heard, there were like 325 or someplace in that range. So let's assume it's 325. If you were to build to support the 325 number versus the 480 number, what would that mean in terms of the number of units you would have to put in there? Does that reduce any number of them?
Yes, it would. It would reduce it by 2 portables.
Okay, what does it do to the trees?
We could save that one sycamore.
There you go.
Hallelujah. Anybody disagree with that approach?
You could reduce just one portable and save the tree, right?
Well, correct, but yeah, but we
You guys
can-
would agree
the
to do that?
reduction is 2.
Is that something you would, okay?
We would do it.
So we're going from 6 to 8, to 8 to 6.
Jeff, any problem with that? No. Okay?
Was it 6 or 7 that you were not getting to?
It was eight classrooms down to 6.
Okay.
And are we changing the number of students that's allowed?
No, they can.
No, they could just allow, but they're just not gonna, they're not gonna.
They're gonna come back if they can't squeeze them
Yeah.
in, and they've got a lot of space.
Okay, so that's you
Yeah,
guys
we
are
can live with
are
that,
modifying
yes.
it to be six trailers and removing the one that's located where the tree is?
Sycamore's gonna stay.
And-
Yes.
And then which would be the other one that'd be removed?
The one right
So it'd be,
north of that,
it'd be the two closest to Fern Hill.
Okay.
But you said reducing from 8 to 6 trailers.
We're almost
It's
there.
from 8 to 6 classrooms. We'll still have the administration building and the bathroom. It's a
Okay.
total of 10
Portables
down to 8.
Okay.
Okay, so 2 classroom trailers are eliminated.
Correct.
Okay, I think those are good moves. Okay, I have one last question. I'm going to turn it over to the other commissioners. Is there a kindergarten there, or is there not a kindergarten?
There is.
When did the kindergarten come back?
Are you asking the question, is there kindergarten there or is there preschool there?
Somebody said kindergarten.
Okay, we have kindergarten there. We currently do, and we will have one additional class of kindergarten or transitional kindergarten.
Are those included in the traffic count and all this? Because I didn't see any mention of that anywhere in the staff report.
That's all part of our school is kindergarten through 5th grade. So all kindergarten is there.
Is it in the plan?
It's on the site.
Yeah, one of the
Okay.
portables is a kindergarten portable.
And those are run by you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, anybody else got any other issues they want to bring up? Commissioner Hill, I'm sure you do.
I have some. Are we going category by category? Or
Pick a category you want to go through.
Okay. Well, in no particular order of importance, the MND on 74 says the project would increase the amount of impervious surface on the site that would accumulate more pollutants, make them available for transport and stormwater runoff. There's no justification calling that a less than significant impact, and we don't know what cumulative impact might be associated with phase 2. So how are we dealing with impervious?
I think I'm gonna look to Renika for details on this, but I believe they're well under the impermeable coverage limits for the property. Is that correct?
Regardless, even if they go with a 1-story phase 2 instead of a 2-story?
Not on phase 2.
Yeah, you don't need to be concerned about that at this point in time.
Okay.
They'll have to have that study
Yeah,
permeable coverage
for this
of.
phase, yes, they're well under it.
I guess it's a similar question about cumulative grading. We don't know what's going on in phase 2, so
Right.
we don't know whether there's an issue there yet.
Well, and a quick question on that, just the observation in this run for phase 1 has zeros for cumulative grading on this phase, correct? So no additive effect from this phase.
No, there's two different categories of grading. There's exempt and non-exempt.
And
There's no
yeah.
non-exempt grading.
Exactly, and that's all we track in terms of our conformance, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Looking ahead to, we see on the plan a phase 2 that shows a building sited right next to the sidewalk with no setback. That's a variance so we don't care
Phase
about
2.
that now?
Phase
No,
2.
we explained in the environmental document that was, and in the meetings that was placed there to give the worst-case scenario for evaluation on aesthetics and views, but we have not set the exact location of the building. That will come.
Just a quick one on that,
Here's
Craig,
a phase.
if I could, just to ask, is there consideration of putting a phase 2 on the footprint of phase 1, just for a observation?
Everything's on the table.
Okay.
Okay, here's one that is phase 1 wholly. It appears to be that you have a significant impact on noise. You've got the city daytime noise limit of 55 dB A-weighted. You've got a central air conditioning unit that's 51. We have a cumulative issue, though, then you've added an additional 0.9 decibels for the traffic increase. Whether that's accurate, I don't know, but now we're up to at least 52. And then we haven't counted the noise of recess of kids and how that would work out. And that's at least going to get us over the 55 decibel rating. So, and then if you're talking about staggered schedules, you're talking about twice as much recess time as currently exists. So how does noise shake out on all this?
Well, I'll tell you that as far as the students outdoors, they're going to be separated by grade level, so not the entire student body will not be outside at the same time. And so there'll be some rotation so that you're not going to have the full effect of the added school for during recess periods.
You're close to the city noise threshold already with the air conditioner and the traffic impact, whatever. So any amount of kid noise puts you right at that or over, I would think. and I don't know that that's
Well,
any mitigation.
on the operations for schools, it's exempt under the LIP for school operations.
But
The municipal code, under the municipal code.
Let me ask you one more question.
No,
while
wait,
you're-
hang on.
He didn't answer his question, yeah.
Noise impacts are exempt under the MMC?
The operating.
So, if I may again.
Please.
The city's municipal code does exempt playground activities from a permitted school.
I see, okay, thank you, that answers that question.
And then also the city's noise ordinance, the noise ordinance is the 55 is referring to stationary noise, not roadway noise. So, pardon? Yeah. So there would be a less than 1 decibel increase, the way we modeled it, there would be a less than 1 decibel increase in traffic noise. That's essentially inaudible. And so, but that also doesn't count towards the stationary noise that is set by the 55. So the 55 is really for like mechanical equipment, HVAC, things like that. That's the way that the code has been interpreted.
So, other noise comments?
One of the biggest complaints when the school first opened, it was particularly with one principal. There was a huge complaint by neighbors about the PA system and the bells. It was excessively used and the bells were going off all the time. Is there any control on that? Because you have a PA system that I've heard that you can hear a block away.
I mean, it's not going to change from what is taking place now. So
Will it increase?
I don't anticipate that.
Okay, but
It
if
would only increase if they have a staggered schedule that suddenly they have twice as many recesses or, you know, the schedule of the day doubles up.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I want to go to trees.
Anybody else get noise?
No additional noise.
Noise is done, trees, stuck trees.
No, go ahead.
Commissioner Hill.
You've got the one western sycamore, and it sounds like we've alleviated that, so that's great. The map shows potentially 10 western sycamores within the biological significance area, and we don't know the plan of phase 2, or is there any way to say, let's ensure that no more of those are cut?
Let's get to phase 2.
That's
And
phase 2, okay. All
You
right,
wouldn't
so
be able to constrain the future planning commission anyway. They could remove that condition if you put it in.
Okay, so go ahead, more trees?
Well, is there anything going to be done for the people who put in the cherry trees for their grandma?
They're not cherry trees, they were pear trees, a common pear, and they were donated by a realtor.
They weren't individual families?
No, the plaques that we had found at the base of some of the trees that you could still read, it was a realtor, and I don't remember which one? Malibu Realty.
By way of explanation, I asked this question of staff, and Planner Brooks, you had said something to the effect that there was documentation of memorial status, but that it burned in the fire. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, the city received an anonymous email where that question was raised about the trees that were donated to the school as memorial trees. When I inquired about what that was, because it was the first time I had heard of it, apparently there was a site plan that identified the location of trees that were dedicated in memoriam to someone. But that site plan, it was kept at an individual's home, and that home was burned. That's what I was told.
I don't understand how that happens. My concern here is this is completely trivial to 99.999% of the world here, but there may be, a handful of families where this could be a huge deal. They come back from somewhere else and their tree is gone.
The only tangible evidence that we have of where it came from, again, is the monuments that are at the base of the trees. Some of them are unreadable, but most of them that are all say the same thing. It's the realtor.
Okay. No individual names?
None.
Okay.
Trivia that the realtor's daughter married Rick Caruso.
All right. Any other issues, guys?
Yes, big one.
I just want to say that since the money that was for mitigation for the loss of that one Western Sycamore was gonna go to Joe Edmonston, I'm pleased at the way this is going.
A side benefit.
Okay, now, I did talk about this question with Trevor, and I talked about it with Craig George, and I got conflicting and vague answers, I should say. So you correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. But I'm trying to understand what responsibility the city has on the construction of these units, because I'm looking at this and I see that phase 2 goes over 0.1 FAR, 0.15, okay? There's no question about that calculation. So there is a question about how phase 2 could ever be built. Now, there's a provision that allows 0.20 in the Civic Center. So I look at this as, well, will phase 2 ever happen? And then I read the description of what we're doing here tonight, and we're allowing basically temporary portable units. And if I look at the municipal code, it says the only time you can have those is in a trailer park or a burnout, or during the time of construction. So my question is, are these buildings themselves? I know this, and I got the answer from Trevor, well, the state does that. And I got the answer from Craig George, goes, well, I guess the state does that. And I said, well, what happens if they're a trailer? Oh, well, that's not a building. So maybe that's different. Are these permanently attached to the ground? Do they have foundations? Or are they trailers? Because I don't want to approve a temporary structure that's permanent. And according to Trevor, just so you understand this,
yeah,
he's saying the city's, and Body is saying the city considers these permanent structures. Is that correct?
The way that the state reviews portables, there are two different ways. They're on concrete foundations or on wood foundations. These are on wood foundations. And so they're going to be there while this new plan comes up for the portable buildings, and the state has already approved them to be there.
But if they could prove them to be there temporarily or permanently?
They're there permanently, but I will tell you that the state does not want them. We have a huge issue all over the whole state of portables they're trying to get rid of. So they're doing what they can in their powers to make sure they're not permanent. But they were approved under permanent.
Isn't a state agency tasked with inspecting that as well to ensure that they're kept in a safe condition?
Yeah, they do, and the district has responsibility too.
Okay. Well, when I talked to Craig George, he said, yeah, but that's not totally true.
Well, but let's assume he's true.
No, but I mean.
Well, let's also remember that the city building official has nothing to do with what gets permitted or inspected or anything for the school district.
Except he told me he did.
Well.
And he said the city is responsible for assuring, this is a quote, ADA compliance. We must assure ADA compliance. We must assure wind load safety factors, which has to do with the foundation. We have to assure fire access compliance.
You got?
And we have to ensure emergency exit. We're in charge of health and safety.
I can't speak to that part. I did see that there was a local emergency access fire plan approval as part of the plan set, and I'll just defer to the school district to speak to the other.
Because when we look at buildings.
They don't go through plan check with us.
But when we look at buildings, we know the fire department requires 5 feet around each building so they can put it out. I look at your plans and they're right up against each other.
But they got a fire approval, John.
Well,
We have a little bit of experience in this because there's a whole development going on over at the high school area where we haven't been involved and when we're not doing anything and the state is doing the whole thing. I mean, the state architect has the responsibility of designing every school building, I think, that goes in the state. And so we know that as interesting as it might be to have Craig's opinion on it, I'm not sure that it's relevant.
Well, what you say is not exactly true. They're required to do our municipal lighting ordinance, for example. It's not a state ordinance, it's not their ordinance, it's our ordinance. And that's one of the requirements.
So where are you trying to go with this,
Well,
John?
I'm trying to go with the fact that we're approving what is called a temporary building.
Okay.
And the city is saying it's a permanent building.
And they're saying it's a permanent building, and the state has said it's a permanent
Okay,
building.
so why are we saying temporary when we have this, you know, the description of the project?
Because they intend to phase two?
Well, we don't know. I mean, that's why I'm saying,
Should we change the description of the project? Would that make it easier for you?
I guess so. I mean, Trevor, is there a difference? If this is a permanent building?
These buildings aren't being required to be removed at any period of time. They're being, so you should look at this as if the structures are gonna remain. Their intention, as they've shown in the environmental documents, is to replace this with a more permanent structure. But at this point,
So when they do that, though, they come in and get a demolition permit and all that
yes,
kind of stuff?
they'll have to come here when they wanna make that change.
So when we make the resolution, shouldn't we say permanent instead of temporary?
I don't think there's no restriction on it, so the buildings can remain. So there's no reason I don't think you need to change anything in here.
Well, then why do they describe them as temporary?
It's in the staff report.
That might be a characterization of the nature of how they're normally used.
Right.
Is there any time restraint on this? Is there any,
I
I mean, they have a useful life, but they're gonna be inspected, and that's covered by the state, so they'll probably have to be replaced at some point, but you've been approved to put these in the location, so they'll be replaced like for
I
like.
think we've tried to use the word portable rather than temporary, and it may have gotten listed in there as temporary somewhere, but they're basically portable.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Our code doesn't provide for portable.
Well, it doesn't prohibit portable. The code allows for modular construction or off-site things that are brought to a site. It's allowed,
Prefabricated.
prefabricated.
So these are actually not trailers. They don't have a trailer hitch
Oh,
on them.
right, correct.
Okay.
They can, I mean, some school districts, not that we would ever want to do this, but some school districts have been using school classroom portables for 50 years.
Okay, do they have ADA access?
Absolutely,
Okay, and I assume you're sure that they won't blow away in the wind? 'Cause there's-
absolutely.
Well, never
How
know.
much wind?
Well,
Yeah,
if it's a
well-
trailer, it blows away. I mean, everybody's seen Arkansas.
Historical winds, historical winds,
And you've got a fire approval.
correct.
They do, yes.
Okay. Now, my last question is, you mentioned a
And we're holding you to that.
floodwater detention basin, which I don't remember seeing, but there in the middle of the park, there's some kind of floodwater detention basin. Is that new grading is that gonna change the fact that it's a flat lot and you play soccer on it now?
Not changing the grading at all. It's actually a depression area at that lower end of the park, but it will be able to provide some water retention.
So it
that
already
that's-
exists, or are you putting it in?
We are putting it, we would put in a berm, but we're not regrading that entire area.
So if I'm running around a little kid with a soccer ball, am I gonna run into the berm? Or is it gonna, I'm
No, I
just
think
wondering, I mean, this is a park we have here.
No, the field is the same elevation along towards the sidewalk, towards the fence. The highest spot the berm would be 3 feet, just to keep that water in the 100-year storm. That's what the modeling shows. So there would be a berm that kind of takes off towards the entrance of the parking lot, and as it comes down towards Gray Fox, it would be about 2.5 feet, I believe.
And so how much of the park does that
It
separate?
quickly as a berm, it comes right back down to the field. The field, there's no big hump in the field.
So it's
The
right
field is
along,
the same in that area.
right along the fence.
A
No.
little bit in, but yeah, and it does show in one of the
Yeah, it looked pretty
presentations.
significant, that's why I was wondering.
Right.
Can they still play?
His question
Soccer.
was, can they still play soccer on the field?
Yes,
The answer is yes.
there's no bump in the
Let's go to
field.
the next question.
Okay,
All right.
done.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
That was good, John was
Yeah,
spring.
one
I have
more.
a few more.
Okay,
You have a few more?
you
Okay.
go first.
Okay.
We've been
I've
holding
been
him
waiting.
back. Let him
Yeah,
go.
all right. So I first just wanted to kind of clarify for the record, Dr. Jody has stated that the Franklin campus has a similar size. I assume that you meant the geographic space, yeah. So the floor space is different to hold 700 students, yeah. And then we did ask a question before about the state architectural review. Any updates just on where that stands?
It's approved.
It is approved, okay. Next, I know in conversations with Stephen Craig, we had just kind of talked hypothetically, if you have kind of, all these numbers are reflects that we've been talking about. And when you look at the boundaries where students can come into each of these locations, maybe if someone could just talk a bit about what flexibility, how that could be leveraged if we find that numbers don't line up exactly with what we're thinking here, whoever's best to speak to that.
Because of our lower enrollments for all of our schools, while we have specific boundaries, we've allowed a lot of intra-district transfers. So some people who might go to Webster have gone to Cabrillo and have gone to Point Dume. But we do find as we need to, we can tighten those, we can make those work. We can move some of the students who might have come over to the Point Dume or Cabrillo to go to Webster. And there's ways to also shift the boundary. The way the boundary lies exactly, we'd have to shift it over quite substantially because there's not as many residences from that point where sort of the point begins as you're driving west to, so we'd have to figure out a point, but we do want to find a balance between our two elementary schools.
And I only bring that out, not because I'm going to propose we add a condition, but just to state that I think as we keep working together as, a city and a school district, that if we find that there's something where, hey, this is just unmanageable, that we could work together on maybe shifting one of those boundaries as appropriate as agreed. I'd just make that request or observation.
And I certainly would want us to be working together as potentially additional housing comes up or is added to, that we actually work together to make sure that we're balancing the uses of our schools and how that works.
Fair enough.
So we're not overloading one over the other.
Perfect, okay.
One follow-up on that. There was a time, if my memory is correct, that the district used to allow inter-district transfers from Ventura County and so on. Is that, and then I think that was terminated at some point. Is that not correct?
We still do that.
You do?
And we do have students who come from other districts. We do have a criteria, like a lot of the people who come from other districts are our teachers or staff, that their students, are allowed to come here.
Right.
But we do have some that are definitely still going at this time.
How much of your school population is that? Is it 5%, 10%?
I think in Malibu, it's between 5 and 10%. If I remember, I don't know if Isaac knows, but that's what I think.
Okay, then next more of an observation, just in discussion again with Steve and Craig. It was called out, there's some meetings that occur at the campus during construction. Those will still be accommodated for Waveside Church and AA, I believe, if that's correct? Okay.
During construction, we will need to move both the AA meeting and the Wayside Church. We do have places we can move them as part of our permitting process. We've already communicated to them that need, mostly because of parking. The actual spaces where they move are not impacted, and we might be able to have the church meet there because they're very small, but the AA meeting can get rather large.
Right.
And so we might need to move that away just because we don't want them blocking the streets. So that's the consideration.
Great, and then the last, I'm down to two. The next would be, we normally have landscaping plans come through. Is that going to be provided or is that required?
There's no landscaping being provided.
Okay,
or
okay.
being proposed.
Okay, and then the last one comes back to the five of us. Just in looking at conditions 1 and condition 53, it's stated that the CUP will permit up to 450 students. Should we also have a condition limiting the number of permanent and temporary staff or staff in general? Something we could talk about if we want to consider that, to say something as effective, 450 students and 80 staff, or a mix of 36 permanent?
I personally think staff is limited by their budget.
Yeah.
And I don't think we need to worry about that.
And our contractual requirements. So we would really not want to have limitations placed on staff, because that is a very difficult area to deal with.
Well, let me clarify though, because now let's just say theoretically you went to 80 full-time and then 20 flexible. You've overrun your parking, to John's earlier
But that would
observation.
never happen.
Well, never is what? I mean,
Especially when you've reduced it already.
I'm just asking, do we want to modify the condition at all? Anyone here, as a straw vote, consider that or no?
I don't.
Anyone else?
I think it's,
Okay,
I think
all right.
it's
Yeah,
not necessary.
There's other controls.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
Commissioner Hill.
Yeah, the category of cultural resources, and it seems that seems to be becoming my category lately, and maybe it's because I have approximately as much Native American DNA as Elizabeth Warren. The district sent letters to the Cahuilla Indians and the Gabrieleños and not to the Chumash. As far as I know and see in any of the documentation, the local, who would have sort of the cultural jurisdiction, if you will, have not been notified. And I don't know that, can anybody say other? Because that's not what the document says.
I will tell you that the district responded to the tribes that had requested to have notice about their projects and under the consultation requirements for tribal notification and mitigation. And so that's the reason why the district contacted those two tribes directly, because those two tribes had submitted letters requesting consultation when projects in this area come up.
Okay. In Santa Monica, the Gabrielino or the Tongva, that would absolutely be appropriate, and I don't know why the Coelho, but maybe. But here, the Chumash, and I know there's some social and sort of quasi-governmental structure almost among them, they would want to be involved in this. And I don't know what, at this point, any notice achieves, but that seems like a big hole.
Stan did explain the law correctly, though, that they need to provide a notice to the city that they request to be notified, and if all the tribes that have requested that notice have been notified, that's the requirement.
And we don't have that standing notice from Mahdi or anybody else?
Well, one of the problems is
They
there's
have not
two
requested
shoemashes.
it.
Huh. Okay.
They both claim jurisdiction.
All right, well, then maybe they should both be getting noticed, but, okay, so then to what we can actually put a condition on here, I would take the recommendation of the consultant that it not just be an on-call archaeologist, but that specifically the consultant asked for full-time monitoring of any ground disturbing activity, that when you're doing anything on the ground, given this is Point Doom, we have historical basis to believe that there could be cultural resources
There's nothing
anywhere
going on
out there.
in this phase one.
We're doing some grading on phase one to put those buildings on there. Anytime they're breaking ground, this is what the consultant asked for. So I would say let's put a condition to grant what the consultant asked for.
And just to be clear, there's a lot of exempt grading. There's no non-exempt. So there's
Okay.
4,500 cubic yards.
Okay. Yeah.
There is a Native American monitor on site, right?
I'm not as concerned about that per se as a qualified professional archaeologist.
I believe doesn't your mitigation measure call for?
It calls for on-call. So it's basically back to our standard condition where if you're digging and you see a bone, you call them up. But this is the kind of thing where you're out there with a backhoe or however you're doing it. You need somebody who knows what to look for, that's their job, to be there to look for that, not just sort of an ad hoc, oh, hey, maybe we'll find something while we tear this place up.
So your request would be that the city's standard condition that's used to have an archaeologist present for any ground disturbing activity be substituted for condition 16, is that correct?
Yeah, and yeah, to implement on page 538 of the PDF.
I don't see why the school district should be treated differently than any other person that builds a house. We don't require on-site archaeologists for any structures that are built in single-family homes that are built. We're taking resources and money. It might be nice to, if we had all the money in the world, to have on-call archaeologists, but if we're not going to apply this citywide to every structure, it seems anomalous to do it to the school district.
I think Point Doom is an anomalous area in terms of resources, given the sacred site on the point itself and villages historically in Paradise Cove and on the other side of the point. And we did just condition on Cliffside that house have an archaeologist on site when they do the grading there. We did just do that last meeting, I think. So I think their own consultant is asking for it, so it doesn't seem unreasonable.
Look, and I think Jeff's comment is something we should think about. The school does not have enough money to finish phase two. You're shy what? A chunk of money, all right? 200 million plus. So I don't know how much we want to take out of their pocket.
Can I ask one favor to clarify, though, just to balance his point? Norm, can you come forward and just help describe what 4,300 cubic yards of R&R really means in terms of impact to the ground there? Because it's all exempt grading, but how much soil movement is that? If you could just help explain.
It's a lot. It's 4,300 cubic yards.
So, but, just because, now if there's something buried in the ground, how would that be exposed in this process? Just maybe talk a bit about that, because I see it as pretty substantial.
What was the number again?
Well, it's 4,300 cubic yards R&R, and 1,200 cubic yards of understructure grading.
Plus 43.
Yeah, so a total of 5,000 some odd, almost 5,500 cubic yards of exempt grading. So as far as possible disturbing of, Chumash history there.
Well, in terms of a project that we're talking about, it's not a great deal of cubic yards. If you think of it in terms that each cubic yard equals 9 square feet of 12 inches of okay, so you're talking about 9 times 5,000, right? 45,000, basically an acre, 200 feet by 200 feet by 12 inches. And to somebody that's involved in the construction process, I would say that's not a great deal of soil to be moved, but other people would think that it is.
Well, and more specifically in R&R, how deep do you have to go?
R&R, in general, you go down 2 feet to 2.5 feet, and then you compact between 6 and 8 inches each lift.
So, I mean, I line up with what Craig's saying, Commissioner Hill is saying, because that volume is significant in a sensitive area, and it was conditioned on a similar project. But
Give Mr. Massetti.
Go ahead.
As a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
So our R&R is actually 5 feet deep. So it means that for something like 20,000 square feet, we're going to be digging about 5 feet deep, turning it over, recompacting it.
So you're talking about 1/5 of an acre then?
Now, I will point out, just for you, on Selfridge, which is 2 blocks away, the oldest Schulean spear point in the history of the world was found. So, the history of North America.
Let's do a straw vote. Right. Commissioner Jennings.
This would be to, it'd be to,
No, not Native American.
Commissioner Hill, just to clarify, I'm thinking that you want to edit the first mitigation measure to address cultural resources. Is that correct? That's on page 21 of 24 of your resolution.
I thought we were looking at condition, are we looking at condition number 16?
No, she's right, page 21 and 24.
Those are standard conditions, condition number 16, I believe.
Well, I'm not seeing it yet, but I think that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, conditions 16 or 17 are the city's standard conditions as they relate to cultural resources. But in the mitigation and monitoring program on page 21 of 24 are specific mitigation measures to address cultural resources. So the first being prior to ground disturbance by the project site clearance, et cetera, it's asking for an on-call.
I guess it comes down to the definition of on-call. I mean, I think what we want is somebody on site.
On site.
So you would alter on page 21, the first paragraph of condition COL-1, the end of the sentence where it says to be on call during all project ground disturbance activities, to be on site during all project ground disturbance activities.
Correct, and that reflects the consultant's direct recommendation.
Is there consensus for that?
Let him ask a question, then we'll do a straw
Steve,
vote.
how many days are you going to be doing R&R grading? It's a couple of days, right?
We think it's probably going to be a couple of weeks. It probably won't be, they'll be doing other work on site as well. I think what I would probably propose as a compromise is that on the first full day of grading, we would have the consultant on site. By the way, we do have, of course, we have a full-time inspector who's on site, and we have a construction manager who will be spending a significant amount of time out there. We won't be relying on the contractor to tell us, hey, I found a bone or some archaeological, something of archaeological importance. Our inspector will be on site during grading and observing it as well. So I don't know, I'd suggest that we have, if we want to make a compromise rather than just on call, and we have them come out the first day that we start digging, and if there's nothing found, we keep them on call for the rest of the time.
Well, the first day you start, you're not going to be at the 5-foot level,
So
probably.
maybe the first day that we're going to be getting any depth. But generally, they're not going to take off all of it and then, 1 foot and then go to another foot. They're going to go in sections and dig all the way down to 5 feet,
we gotta have
set
that
some
all
dirt
the time.
aside, and then they're just turning it over constantly after that.
Yeah, I
Because
guess
we
my-
don't have room to stockpile.
My sense would be, ideally you'd have them there the whole time. If it's a cost thing, you'd still want to have some sort of sampling. So, he has to come every couple of days or in the period, or so that you're getting, just if there is something, there were a proper site there that we don't know about yet, because that
Sure.
hasn't been, that you discover it. You do, like an archaeologist does trenching on an area to find out if they think there's going to be more
Sure.
beyond the trench. If you could have them observe.
I think that's a fair point, and frankly, I think having someone out there for a full day would be in itself wasteful, but maybe instead of that, we would have them do a couple of site visits in the first week of grading, every other afternoon, come out and observe what's actually happening out there, get in the pit, look at the bottoms, because we're gonna have to establish the bottoms first, and see if there's anything in there that looks like, would that work to require that we have them out there, I don't know, a couple hours every other day?
Does that work?
I don't have any findings about the expense and the cost and whether that should be even a factor. It's hard to say. That we need this compromise. I'm just saying we have the consultant's recommendation. Why?
It's your choice, and, you want the condition to be reasonable. So if it's
Yeah.
a significant cost versus the amount of risk that it would, produce something you should consider as you're doing it. But it's your determination, based on the evidence before you, what you've read, as to whether it should be on-site half every other day.
Maybe it's whenever trenches are established, that 5-foot depth is
You
established.
can't get too detailed, guys.
Yeah, you can't, that's my concern.
It's hard to
reasonable.
put a system besides on-site or on-call, so.
If there was one project in Malibu that was held up for 2 years because there was a bone found, so, on-call is usually not a reliable thing to rely on.
We don't know that.
I
But-
need to clarify just one thing, because I made a mistake just a minute ago. When I said 9 square feet, 12 inches down, it's 27 square feet.
7 cubic, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, 27 cubic
Yeah.
feet
Okay.
in a cubic yard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's do a straw vote on having an on-site archaeologist. Is that,
I'm for it.
Yeah,
Jeff? No. Craig?
yes.
John?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'd say no, but we lost.
And so so then the CUL-1 is changed from, in that last sentence, to be on-call to be on-site during all ground disturbance activities, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I said I wouldn't ask another question.
Yep,
But I
during
just-
all
this-
project ground disturbance activities is how it's phrased. Shouldn't that be just ground disturbing activities?
Yeah, there's a better way to phrase,
Grading,
Can we say,
that's the word, grading. There's a grading plan.
Do you want to change that
Can
from
you just
ground
say-
disturbing to grading?
Calling it
sure.
grading.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's do
Same
that.
thing.
Do we have consensus for
Yes.
changing it to that? to-
Change grading?
Wait, no, I like ground disturbing because
We don't have we have a grading map.
right, but in
They
terms of the
can't disturb the ground unless it's on the grading
But in
map.
terms of the phrasing, so just to be clear, if you remove for recompaction, the guy can leave because you've exposed everything, but you're still doing grading work and recompacting, the guy doesn't need to stay.
They do it in layers.
I know, but I'm just saying disturbing does seem more representative of what we'd want to have the person present
Isn't
for.
putting it back disturbing it?
Well,
I mean, you gotta use terms that are used by building people.
So putting it back may be disturbing it, but you'll already, before you're putting the dirt back in, you'll already know if there's anything of
I
significance.
know, but you're gonna be continuously doing both, right?
But to some extent, yes.
Yeah. So it's easier for an inspector.
So what do you want? What name do you want?
I think you use terms that everybody uses, like grading.
So just all grading activities? That's more the language I'm thinking of, because it gives you more flexibility to release
gonna
that
decide
on-site person.
Then, you're just gutting it, whatever you wanna do.
No, I'm just trying to be clear, so they aren't held, if they can make their, initial disturbance activities in a limited window.
Until they've reached full depth.
How about as the archaeologist requires?
You could say during all activities when material is removed? Is that
May I
what
make
you're
a-
looking for?
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
How about during excavation?
Okay.
Okay?
So then when we're,
Everybody
when
good with that?
we're final grading and everything, we don't have to worry about it.
Done.
One last question, take a second. Has this school been cleared for PCBs? And are there plans to do it?
Yes.
So there's no, it's all been done?
Carrie, you're gonna need to, you're gonna need to weigh in on this.
I
So,
want to know what else is going on.
so we've removed the known PCBs. I think there was one encapsulation that occurred. Is that right, or am I mistaken?
Throughout the entire school, there was one floor in a small storage room in the library that had PCBs. They were fully removed, and that area was encapsulated with the oversight of the EPA. There is a deed restriction on that one room because that's one of the requirements, and there is regular monitoring, air and wipe monitoring in that space.
But you're not going to have little guys in white suits running around anymore? Okay,
No.
okay.
Okay, Trevor, what else do we need to do tonight?
So it sounds like you're moving towards a motion.
We are.
I move, we move whatever we just all decided on.
So would that be moving staff's recommendation with the following changes? CUL-1 on page 21 is changed to the last part of the sentence to say, to be on-site during all excavation activities. And then a condition is going to be added that says, every 3 months during the school year, until terminated or modified by the Planning Commission, the school district shall report on traffic conditions, bus use, traffic potentials, and traffic problems and potential solutions to the Planning Commission. And also a condition saying a bus from Juan Cabrillo or another location not in Point Dume approved by the planning director to the school is required for 1 year, and continuing the second and following year unless ridership falls below 10 bus passes sold for a 3-month period during the school year.
Clarification on that, though, sorry. They're sold in annual tranches, whatever you say. Wasn't that stated by someone in operations? Are you able to sell on a quarterly or 3-month basis?
We sell them at the beginning of the school year, before school year starts, and then they're available for purchase throughout sort of the whole year.
Okay, thank you.
And also
So
to
the second part of the thing you just said, if we don't have the ridership in the first year, then we would try to sell the bus passes at the beginning of the second year, but we shouldn't have to run a bus for another 3 months if we've already shown that it's not functional.
That's up to our review, right?
no. It's right now, you can clarify if you want them to start it in the second year, no matter what.
If they come back at the end of the year.
We can't put off our,
No, but if they come back at the end of the first year and say, here's what my experience with the bus is, and the answer is, we've had 2 people riding the bus, so, you know, can we cancel the second year then?
I mean, you can clarify that means the second year would not need to begin if the ridership fell below the 10 bus passes during the first year.
Want to do that? Let's do that. Is that okay, commissioners?
Okay, and then also to clarify, the applicant has withdrawn the 2 trailers that are located closest to Fern Hill,
Right, and we're saving the tree,
which saves the tree,
okay?
the protected tree. So
Kathleen.
does that reflect your motion, John?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Just a quick question. Is there any condition that says they have to give those funds that's separate from
What funds?
the funds for the tree mitigation?
They're not doing.
No, we're not.
No, but that's not my point.
No,
Is there, there's
it's-
no condition
Yeah,
in
if
the,
there's not a tree removed, then there's not that requirement to mitigate.
so we don't have in the conditions listed the explicit statement that since one tree is removed,
They're not removing the tree.
I know, but if they have a condition, it says they gotta give the funds.
It's a good question. Let
Right.
us look.
Trust me, yeah.
There are conditions of approval that require mitigation, so I made notes to remove those conditions from the
Okay,
resolution.
so Trevor needs to have those updated. Yeah.
What conditions are you looking at, Renika?
Let me show you.
So the biology conditions start at number 18 on page 11. So condition number 20.
2022 and 23 is what I made note to remove from the resolution.
Hold on, 20, the submitted tree,
So they can just strike those sections, right?
and things are required as mitigation if replacement plantings are required. Okay, so you want to strike condition 20. What was the other one?
22.
22 and 23. I left 21, which requires measures to protect the native trees.
Okay, so 2020, striking 20, 22, and 23. Does that reflect your,
Oh, I'm sorry, and 24, which calls for a report to demonstrate the restorative planting done, assuming that trees were going to be replanted. So I guess to strike condition number 24.
do you want to do that? Because it also includes an inspection upon completion of all construction.
So maybe
So
we
maybe
should
strike
ask,
restorative planting from that condition?
should we ask that the one tree is not removed and that, docs updated to reflect that, whatever is needed? And so we don't get something wrong, because I'm afraid we might miss something.
Okay, then the resolution is to remove any conditions requiring mitigation for the removal of tree 24 since it's not being removed. Is that,
I accept that.
okay.
Okay, Kathleen. See, what was the vote?
Could you please repeat who seconded the motion?
Jeff did.
Thank you.
Yes. Jeff did.
Yes.
Yes. Did-
Commissioner Mazza,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jennings. Yes. Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Chair Euring,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay,
Move
before
we
we
adjourn.
adjourn, one last thing. School people, thank you very, very much. All right, I think we did, it's not perfect, but I think we made some improvements in what's going on. The residents who came, I think your input helped us make this thing a little bit better. I can assure you that what we're gonna do is keep our eyes on this one, all right? Because we do think that the impact on the residents, we wanna make sure that's as minimal as we can make it, and I think the school district will help us do that. So now, John, would you adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're out of here.